How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. What's up, warriors? So I'm here with Chris Terrell. Welcome to the battlefield of the mind. We're just going to get into it. I could do the big introduction, but I think when you start knowing who this guy is, you're going to be like, I fucking love this dude. So, Chris, tell us, start off with where you were going, because I don't require you to tell your story. You can just follow you.
Okay.
And just tell the shortest version, and then let's just get into talking for fun.
Okay. So we were kind of tee it up what I was about to say. We were talking about, basically, you and I were saying, like, you were giving me the permission to take the brakes off, to use whatever words I know or think or get a little on the fringes, which I'm like, oh, so refreshing, because one of the challenges of what I do is the social media aspect, especially. I have a membership where this isn't the problem, but on the social media side, I teach weight loss. And so I'm talking, everything has a beginner slant. Everything has a more reductive approach to what I do. I'm more, just stripping away most of the nuance and just talking big, which is great. I people need to hear that. I needed to hear that when I was then. But as the person saying it all the time, sometimes it's like, oh, I just want to say the stuff I'm just noodling on. I don't know that I want to share it with everybody, but I think I'm onto something. But I don't know that I should share this because now people are listening. So super excited. Even with just words, man. Listen, I'll nerd out with you on words. I have one of my guys. He's in his 70s and he's lovely to talk to. He's read like 50,000 books. The guy's brilliant to talk to. And I'm writing my next book and I start getting into certain words where he loves to challenge me on my words. And then he realizes the strategy that I'm using, that is not only to challenge the word itself, but to also piss people off by using the word in a way they don't like. I'm like, oh, well, there's no such thing as truth. Truth is nothing more than agreement. And he's like, no, there's still truth. And I'm like, go ahead and tell me. And he starts explaining, and I'm like, but that's only based on what you know up to this point. So when it comes to truth for humans, that's not a real thing. It just comes down to what we agree upon until somebody gives us more information. But most people don't challenge new information. And so truth is simply just what you believe and what you know, which means there's no such thing. And he's like, but there is what is true. I'm like, but only as much as you can accept, and most people can't. And this is where I start losing people pretty quickly, is because they're like, no, that's not it. So I'm like, pick a word. Let's go in. Let's do some shit. What are you noodling on? Let's just lose people immediately. Let's have fun. What am I noodling on? All right. What
you're like,
all right. So I'll tell you, this is where, so a lot of my journey, I went through what I call a midlife transformation. I was living on my own at 19. So I just went right to it from that point forward. And so what I think a lot of people are hitting in their 40s, I was hitting in my 30s, just because I got a jump start. And through that, I've realized I was setting off on, this is where I'm at. I started setting off on some sort of a journey that at first I didn't even know I was on, until one day I started discovering it. And that journey has been what I believe to just the present, just right here, right now, just truly here. I realized I spent so much of my life worried about the past that was already done and anticipating a future that I have no assurance is even going to get here, all at the complete and total expense of everything that is around me right now that I could be appreciating. And I did it for decades, and I didn't even know I was doing it. And the funny thing is, I look back in my life now, and I realize people were trying to tell me. And I just didn't understand, so I ignored it. I thought they were the crazy ones. And it's kind of interesting. And then the other part that pairs with that, it riffs off what you were just talking about with this idea of truth. I was raised very, very religious. And which is its own interesting story. But I remember when I was very much in the thick of it, very much believing in the absolutist terms of right and wrong. I was talking with a friend and he said, right is all relative. Truth is all relative. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, no, most of it's even by consensus. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, what color's the sky? And I was like, it's blue. He's like, Well, we get enough people that look at that and say, that's green. It's now green. It's like, we just got to get enough people to agree upon it. And it's now green. I'm like, I mean, I couldn't argue with him because I was like, that's true. Words are made up. Blue isn't a thing. We call the sky blue, but the sky is not blue. And so, which has led also to the third part of my presence thing, which is realizing that words are meaningless. Like, words are great. I love words. But I have been, for the last 4 years, constantly, daily practicing saying my thoughts out loud in a way that I feel is true to what I'm thinking. And I still don't know that I can do it. No, not still don't think. I know I can't. I find that what I have to do is spend half the conversation defining what words mean to each other. Because about a year ago, I started realizing I could have a whole conversation with someone. We could both speak English, and neither one of us knew what each other said. And we thought we did.
You felt like you nailed it.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
You and I, we're about to have a conversation that some people will love and some people will hate. And I'm good with both. This is about to be fun because the power of words is fascinating to me. And I have redefined words better than Webster ever could. There are words that people use all the time that they have incorrect. And I will challenge Harvard professors on this shit. And so, like, there's first I'm going to go back into this thing because you said a couple of the trigger words we're going to get into. I really like that you said my journey has led me to the present, and people will not understand this until they get there. They won't understand. And this is a lot of times. I had one of my coaches, he called me up with this exact thing because, like, if you look at the journey through our belief systems, it starts off with the victim mentality of this happened to me. And then it goes to the Tony Robbins version of now it's happening for you. It happened to you. Now it's happening for you. And everyone knows this. And people think that's where it stops. No, that goes from victim to growth. But then it gets to the point where you just said, which is a transcendent point of view. It's like that monk on a mountain to where now it's not things are happening to you. Things aren't happening for you. Things are simply happening. And I am the observer of what is. And I'm okay with this. I can be present in the present, and I can allow things to grow at this point without feeling like I am the center of all things that need to control. You're like, well, that's a big jump. You're right. And then it gets to the point of transcendence to now it happens through me and I become the creator. And this is the part where, like, now I can create the path. Now I can make the program. Now I can do the thing because the trauma I had to go through has created the outlook and understanding of what truly is. So I can now create the way for others to get out. Like, then it works through you. And these are the evolution phases that people don't really understand. So even getting to the point of presence in the presence, this beats fear. This beats anxiety. This beats depression. This makes it so you can start having gratitude. And people don't know this yet because they're still stuck in it's happening to me. I love this. I love where you're at. You're like, I have found presence in the presence and I have found peace. It's Lao Tzu where he says, like, depression is in the past and then anxiety is in the future, but peace is in the present. And here you are. You're like, I have
found peace.
I have found it. I have found it. It was always there, but I wasn't looking for it.
It was always there. I used to want to just try to be happy. And then I realized a couple of ththings. So I was a music major, what little college I did go to for that. And I was always into singing in school. And I love all things music. And here's the thing I know about music. Music that is all flat is dull and boring. We need crescendos and decrescendos. We need changes in tempo. We need rhythm that alternate to vary. The contrasting sounds make it exciting, give it emotion and feeling. And I realize if I'm trying to live life all happy, I'm choosing to live a happy song with no crescendos and decrescendos, with no rises and falls. I'm like, I don't know if that's the right way to do it. And
I don't know if it's possible.
Then that led to joy. I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's possible to just live in a happy all the time unless you're in denial.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Wholeheartedly agree with that. But also I don't know that I even would want to, because I've realized some of the best, most important discoveries I have found have been crying on the ground. Like,
rock bottom is the moment people
myself.
avoid. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rock
And
bottom
so
that people avoid at all cost, even though like you hitting those lowest of lows is the most existential moment you have in your life, where the path that you were traveling is no longer viable because I see where the destination goes and I have to do something different. And we avoid that at all cost when we think we're supposed to be happy all the time. But that tragic moment is like the greatest moment of your life.
it is.
The moment that you said, I'm losing weight, I didn't see what the change, that moment that like, I'm done. Like, that's the most powerful moment that could have happened, because you were doing a behavior to a certain point until you said, never again. And then you changed everything. Like, those moments are beautiful. And yet people avoid the lows.
They're not always happy.
No, they're terrible.
Oh. Some of them are quite awful, quite unpleasant, actually.
Yeah.
But
keep going. I'm sorry.
I discovered it's about peace, like what you were saying earlier. Like, it's the peace part, and that's really where, in my pursuit of peace, is really what brought my focus of finding the present. It gave it that energy it needed, because I realized the present is where I find the most peace. Because if I can truly get into a present moment while still being conscious in that moment, don't get me wrong, I love meditation, it's fine, but I'm not looking at the world. And so like, I want both. I'm greedy. And so when I'm standing there, like, I want to be present in whatever is happening, and realize that very, very rarely is there actually a problem in a single moment. I mean, usually the moment's like, fine, it's actually quite comfortable here. But the worry and doubt just gets it's so appealing. And so it's learning to fight that away, I guess.
Yeah, man, we're going to have fun. I love it. You're right. And being able to have the presence in the presence. It's like the Master Oogway. You know what I'm talking about, when he's like, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
I've heard that.
That's Kung Fu Panda. So it's Mr. Oogway, the old turtle, he was awesome. And so, in which case, is what we're finding is what's interesting is if you look into old philosophy, whether it be, Chinese philosophy or Stoic philosophy or, any of the old philosophers, it's amazing that you and I are finding these discoveries that have been discovered for thousands of years. And we're just standing on the shoulders of giants who discovered the same thing. And if you're doing what I'm doing, I oftentimes will be tearing something down to the DNA and then be very, very excited when I realize, well, that's as far as Socrates got too. That's amazing. Like, I didn't read him yet, but then when I did, I'm like, that's what I found also. I got as far as Socrates. Nice. Like you start feeling like that's pretty badass, but then I can stand on the shoulders of Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, and I can start going, man, I'm finding some new things here. But finding presence in the peace.
You hit on a phenomenon that I've only recently discovered last year. Which is, so all right. So I came up this concept, like, I like to think in pictures. And so I'm always, and I think a lot of people do too, so I'm always trying to take, in my quest to figure out how to teach what I know, I'm always trying to take concepts and place them onto a graphic, an image, something. And I formulated this process that I've been doing in business for a long time for a process of improvement, where failure and root cause analysis are an essential part of the process. I learned that with my previous career. I was bringing that to my life, and I was sharing, like, how do I convey this so simply to somebody that doesn't necessarily, they haven't like been completely absorbed in a business setting where they hear this sort of talk. And so I visualize it as a loop, because I was thinking you're drawing it as a graph. You're going up, you're going down, and then you make the turn and you come back. And I started actually teaching it to people because I was like, yeah, that this works. This is what I was thinking. And anyway, so I'm going through things, and I stumbled on to a YouTube video by Ray Dalio, the billionaire guy. And I was watching, I was like, wow, this is really, I like how this guy talks. I've never heard him before. I'd never listened. I'd heard the name, but I just never stopped and listened. I was like, I really like how he talks. And so I'm looking something up, and no joke, not just within a few months earlier, I drew this continual loop process. He has a book here. Here, let me switch. Can you see that loop right there?
Yeah, I see it.
It's the same damn loop. I freaked out. I'm like, because I was like, am I not allowed to teach this? Because people are going to think I ripped this off. The imposter syndrome just rushed over me like a wave. It was just, so I called my coach. I'm like, dude, I need another perspective on this because right now I'm struggling. And he said, this is so cool that you're saying this. He goes, how cool is it that you are getting to the vibration, you're getting to the frequency, the tune, this is how we like to talk about it, where you're channeling the same insights that he is. And now you get to add to it. And I was like, oh, I like how you see it better. Your way way better. So I adopted that way. But yeah, it's true. We're uncovering truth, and it's fun. It's so fun.
And it's been there the whole time. And the beauty of this, and this is where the authenticity part is reassuring, is that you found the same thing that he found. I got a podcast being posted soon with Maria Callis, and if you want to talk to someone who will blow your fucking mind, like she had me spinning for days because she's so tapped into the vibration and spirit side I was in a different thing, but you were tapping into like the ocean of information, and you were getting some of the same things that like another guy found this, and out of all there is to know, you found it too. And you're made to build the authentic version of what that piece means, because the way Ray does it and the way you do it, you're going to connect to people he couldn't connect to. So you were meant to find the same information. This gets a little esoteric, but it's meant to be like what you found and then take it further. Like you were supposed to get what he found, but you're going to take it in a direction that may challenge everything. Like here's a point of view on this. When Newton got hit in the head with an apple and he said, seems like gravity's pulling us down, everyone looked at him and said, seems right, dude. Seems right. Yeah, until Einstein comes along and starts doing the physics on this, it's like it doesn't look like it's pulling down. It looks like we're being pushed from the outside down. It seems like gravity is pushing down, not pulling down. And they looked at the math and they go, well, that seems more right. Well, who was right? Both were right.
Yeah.
Both are correct. And Newton was right for hundreds of years until you found the next piece. And so Einstein looked at the same thing and just said it a different way. Both are right. Gravity is bringing us down for sure. How is it doing it? It may be subjectively different based on the way that somebody else sees it. You found the same thing about gravity, but you're going to like take it a different direction that people will go, actually, Chris's way is resonating with me more than Ray. And you're going to make people think you are supposed to find it because you're supposed to evolve it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Warrior, thank you so much for being a part of the information that we have. And you're part of our story as we are a part of yours. It's very much an honor to be able to connect with each other. If you want to know more or you want to get started with working with me or working with our warriors so that you can begin your path to authenticity, strength, leadership, and accountability, this is the way. Together, we are way stronger. Now you get to choose. Do you go forward or keep doing what you've always done? If you stay where you're at, hey, click on some of the stuff and follow what it is. We got motivational stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got more things. Just subscribe and do the stuff, and we'll keep you updated. But if you want to start going in, start jumping into what our programs offer and start your journey and being the hero in your own story.
That evolution of information, of knowledge, I think is such an important thing for, I think, everybody to understand. But I know for me as an individual, it's been essential. You know, I struggled bad. I mean, I have for a long time had a massive struggle with imposter syndrome. I mean, it caused me a lot of problems because I gave into it and didn't even try to overcome it. And so
how did it work for you? Like, which way did it manifest itself? Is like the fear of it? Was it doubt or was it fear?
I worked myself to the bone, worried that at any moment somebody was going to find out I didn't belong there. I was a fraud.
So it was fear. You were in this future.
Oh, totally.
Someone's going to expose you as something that you're not, right? Okay. And then how often did that happen?
I was the son of an owner of a company. So with that, it came with it some very interesting things that honestly, I didn't know how to handle it. Nobody ever sat me down and explained it to me. And I can't fault my dad. Sure. He didn't know.
They didn't know.
So yeah, so I had to work through that. But I share all that to say I realized that understanding is my job not to be the originator of something. It's my job to understand the truth of something, and validate it. I need some way to know if I'm learning truth, and then I need to add to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's been so fun this last several years is I've begun to become much more self-aware of many aspects of myself and beginning to actually be able to articulate things, concepts, we're much more abstract in nature. When in my head, you have all the logic switches, metaphorically speaking, in our brain. When one of them goes from truth is absolute to truth is subjective, when you just flip that switch, it affects so many other switches because that switch was used in so many formulas. And it started to have this cascade effect throughout my mind that ultimately really began when I started to lose my religious upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to you said get fringe. So I'm going to get fringe. This is an interesting thing that
you're
happened.
Not losing me.
I've never talked about this with anybody outside of a couple of coaches. I was at the time, everything we were just sort of discovering, or I was just sort of really wrapping my head around the idea that two people can be right about different things. I learned this I took Bob Proctor's program, Thinking into Results, which I loved. And in it, he holds up a book and he says, there's nothing printed on the cover of the book. Am I right or wrong? And, and there's clearly something printed. And the guy would be like, well, sure, there's something printed. He goes, no, there's not. And you have this dialogue back and forth. The ultimate part being Bob Proctor's looking at the back, which is blank, and the other guy's looking at the front, which has something written. They're both right. And that unlocked a switch in my head where I started realizing, wait a minute, if I have this water bottle that I hold in front of you, the only way for you to know what's on the other side of it is for me to tell you. I mean, you could come over here if you wanted, or I could turn it around, but you can't see this side and this side at the same time. But all sides are valid. I look on this side, I see a dent. So I say, this is a dented water bottle. You look at it, you don't see one. You say it's not a dented water bottle. We're both right, based on what we know. That then led to something I already knew, which is perception is reality, but I never stopped and considered my perspective, my point of view. How am I looking at something? Which all of a sudden that started to make sense, which is why people on polar opposites can have a hard time talking because they just don't see the issue. There's very little overlap of where they agree. And then here's the final thing to happen. All that to kind of say, and then I was reading a bunch of Eckhart Tolle stuff, and that was really bouncing in my mind a lot. Some of the stuff that he had written. I was reading The Power of Now, and I was listening to a lot of his content on YouTube, and it was just kind of sitting in there. And I'm a trail runner. I do ultra marathons. I love just running in the woods, and so I'm running in these woods where I often do by myself, and I'm just listening to something. I don't remember, somebody talking. It wasn't like music or anything, and I just sort of turned it off. I could feel it was just one of those moments where my brain was just chewing on something, but it needed my conscious mind and it just needed all of it. And I had to just turn off the music. And, for me, running, especially my easy run days, are very meditative in nature, because it's not pushing me. I'm not redlining it. And I'm just sort of repetitive going for an hour or 2 hours. And I had this moment. I literally had to stop running. I'm a visual thinker. I think in moving pictures, not static. I think in very visual, lots of movement, colors, bright, vibrant, dark, like the whole spectrum. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, this idea, because I've been trying to figure out, I kept hearing from so many people that tap into infinite intelligence, a higher power, creator, like all these things. Everybody's talking, using different words to describe this greaterness. And I have a complex, I've been on a spiritual journey now for 20 years, on a quest to figure out what I believe. And it's taken me many places. And the idea of a higher being has become an interesting concept for me. And so I'm running. And all of a sudden it hit me. I had to stop. And I'm literally, I could see it in the, for lack of a way to describe it, I'm going to say mind's eye. Like my eyes are open, but it's just, how you can imagine a picture of an elephant, that eye, whatever that is. I'm seeing this thing in my head and realizing, and all of a sudden this thought is, information seeks to coalesce. Intelligence seeks to coalesce. It wants to come together. Like you said, information is always there. The truth of how to fly a plane always existed. It was just waiting for us to figure it out, but it was always there. The truth of how AI, these generative models existed. It was always there. It's just been waiting for us to figure it out. But we had to first, many years ago, learn how to talk to each other. And then we had to learn how to write stuff down. Then we had to learn how to pass information around faster. Then we had the internet. And then information started passing around quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. And all of a sudden I started thinking, if I could see intellect as light, if you could see it as such, in my mind, it was being represented that way. You could just imagine, like, you have the universe, you have our solar system, and right there on Earth is all these lights of all this information. And as if you could see it, it's just there. And and now all of a sudden I realized, I'm like, I think my job is to tap into this, to find what's meant to be understood by me from my perspective, how I see the world through my unique set of experiences that only I have, and then add whatever it is I'm meant to add that only I could add, even if it is only 0.001%. That's my piece I'm supposed to add, because that piece will continue on. And that was sort of this thought that I had in that moment. It really gave me a lot of permission to feel free to be like, it's okay to evolve an idea, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Everybody is. No one's perspective is invalid. Everyone's perspective is valid. It's just different. So
I love it. No,
that was so good. I don't know what it was.
No, I'm with you, and I'm going to add to it too. So, like, First off, you dropped like a ton of bombs in here that we have to go in. Words are meaningless. Failure is essential. Truth and authenticity and judgment. Two people can be right. Tap into the greater knowledge and then translate your piece of it. Listen, you dropped a bunch of bombs in here that, like, each one could be its own show. So, in any case, I'm going to start off with the backwards. I'm going to start off at the end and move it backwards. All right. So you had your 0.001%. Let me share something with you. When I started tapping into my spirit side, this is one of the things I've had a lot of tools come up, because I wasn't tapped into. My spiritual journey has only been a few years. Like, I had to do my own surrender, which, I came from the logic physical side. So that was like, mind, body was my strong side. Once I started tapping into spirit, and now I've just opened up into heart, like, I started realizing there's a whole new level of balance I did not have. Once I opened up my spirit side, information I did not have before started to show up. One of the things that I have run across psychologists, PhDs, published authors, people who are coaches, I've been running this against some of, like, the biggest brains that I can run into. And I'm hoping that this works today, because it didn't the other day. So, come on, window. Let me know when you can see this. So in the middle of the night, 3 a.m, I get woke up with this, and I start just going onto my iPad, and I just start, like, creating. Is it just not working? Come on, system. Window. Let's see. I want this one open. Let's see. It says the internet's going too slow. Come on, internet. In any case.
Gotta love 21st century problems. Oh, something's loading.
I hope it does. All right, there we go. All right. So this is my map. This is the map of how humans work. Yeah. So this thing actually, like, shows, like, how do we work? And what's cool about this is it got into this thing where God's like, start drawing circles and start off with belief, values, feelings is the core. Arguably, love can be, but we're not going to get into it. And it's like beliefs at the middle of all things, either your goal system, your identity. But then how do things start getting in when you start getting into fear, excuses, doubt, distractions, or even our loss system when we're going through grief for, like, denial, depression, anger, and getting to acceptance, like bargaining. How do we do these things? How do they attack us? How do they get in? And it seems like feelings is our weakest side because it's the most volatile. It's the part that changes like the weather. So it can come in through these areas. And most people don't have protection on their armor, their feeling side. But feelings get into it and start to inhibit the core, which is our beliefs. Now, belief does not mean religion, even though in our identity, it does get into faith, philosophies, religion. But this belief system is the way that we see the world. This is the filters that we use. And if you're racist, you'll see everything's racist. If you're sexist, everything becomes sexist. If you're, whatever, you're going to see everything start to go that direction. No matter what your belief system is, you will create self-fulfilling prophecies. The point is whenever I'm working with somebody, I can find where they are in their things that cause them distress, pain, or wherever they're at. I can find them on this and then start following the questions that like, oh, you're stuck in depression or anger. Well, let's go through. Is any of the enemies within coming through, attacking through the feelings? And if they are, we address which ones and how to fight them. Then we ask feeling questions to lead to beliefs that may lead to identity. Oftentimes people will know the answer, but not the solution. This means they're going to go right to identity because I know your identity is messed up. Let's go ahead and rewire your identity. But they didn't go through the feelings, they didn't go through the loss, and they didn't go through belief, which means you had too big of a jump. It creates a cognitive dissonance, and then people won't be able to connect. They'll start self-sabotaging and go right back to old behavior because the default was never upgraded. In which case, if I find them on here, that's when I can start following which part needs to be broken if it's a curse, which demons need to be slain. And sometimes you find a dragon and something that's destroying your entire life. And sometimes we have to fight those things. We have to figure out what's attacking you. Are you getting caught up in anxiety, which is fear? Are you getting caught up in doubt, which is destroying your motivation and crushing your dreams? Are you getting caught up in the most dangerous out of all of these is when you're in your loss system and you create a protection system of denial and you mix that in with distractions that comes in through your positive feelings. You mix distractions and denial together. You know what that mix makes? Addiction. They come in through your pleasure side. Really difficult to catch them because they come in with, I want to feel good because I don't want to accept the reality of what is. Fucking dangerous. This map is one of those things where I got to tap into this universal, this greater knowledge. And when I talked to Maria Callas, she was like, yes, that greater knowledge is an ocean of information, but we are like kids with buckets, and our buckets can only carry so much of what there is to know. And so you're meant to get this. But she's like, even more crazy is you wrote the map in 2D. She said, just have fun making it 3D. And I was like, oh man. She's like, because it's actually different than this, but you have found what it looks like on paper. But the real thing is in 3D and it's far greater. And each one of these circles represents an entire book of information. And so like each one of these is also by itself humongous. And so this was a very powerful tool. So when I hear people say, I've tapped into, a greater part of the universe, or I'm tapping into greater knowledge, I'm like, I can't take credit for this. It woke me up in the middle of the night, said, start drawing circles, and I haven't seen anyone who can beat it yet.
Aren't those moments amazing when you just are struck with, I use the word inspiration, but it's sort of like an idea that is in your head must get out.
Correct. What's even more crazy is we're going to go to your religion stuff. I beat the shit out of religion stuff all the time, but like you were given 0.001% of the information for a purpose. There's something that you're meant to do. And people oftentimes think purpose is supposed to be fun or exciting or awesome. I'm supposed to take everyone roller skating and for ice cream. That's my purpose. And you're like, you wish. But if you actually find your true purpose, very rarely when I find somebody who's found their purpose, is it something fun. Usually our purpose is something very difficult to do. That's why I found that God does not ask easy things. And I don't care. I know Bob Proctor's big on The Secret and all that stuff. I know that these guys, when they get into the law of attraction, law of magnetism, law of vibrations, like I'm like, well, God made them all. It's like, well, you think he didn't know? Like he made them all. Pick your thing. I don't care. Go into meditation, do affirmations, dream board. I don't care.
Many doors that open to the same room.
He made them all. You pick your tool. It doesn't matter. Whichever one, they all go to the same place. In any case, we're tapping into something. And once you realize your purpose, and I've talked to some people who are like, I think my purpose is to bring joy. I'm like, you're still on your journey. Like once you found your purpose, I tapped into that 0.001%. The humility smashed me in the face. And now I have found something I am meant to do that is fucking hard. And like, God does not ask you to do easy things. And that's how you find true fulfillment, is doing things that are difficult, which leads to the failure part. Failure is essential. It's ironic that people are so afraid of failure. What if I fail? What if I fail? As if we're not supposed to. Like, if you pray for wisdom, expect to lose, because the way you learn more, it's triple experience when you get your ass kicked. You learn way more when you lose than when you win. And yet you think you're supposed to only win or else don't play. Then you can't learn. You're not going to win if you only think you're supposed to win. You have to lose to become smarter, wiser, stronger. You have to fail. That's why I love working out. When you work out or you run till you're done. Not like the run is done. You're doing ultra marathons. For people who don't know, that's 100 miles plus. They don't know what that is.
Well, well, I'm not to that level yet. I'm only on the 50K plus. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Listen, I got a buddy who was doing the 100-mile ones, and he's like, it's an ultra marathon, and don't call it something different. I'm like, fair enough.
Those are my buddies. That's the people I hang out with. Yeah, they're nuts. I'm like, gosh, I'm not there yet.
But those are big runs. But you run to failure. You run till like, I am smoked. The same thing when you're lifting and you're trying to see how much you can go until that's my limit. Failure is how you become stronger. And yet people are so afraid of it. And this is why I love these moments when you get into, well, I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of failure. Just like we said in those moments that you had your rock bottom moment, these are the greatest moments of your life when you realize what your true limits are and then you push them. And the most proud that we have ever been of ourselves is when we did something fucking hard.
Yeah. The hardest experiences are the ones that I remember the most. And it was interesting. I got hooked on that drug of chasing my best because I realized it is the best drug that is out there. It makes me better every time I use it, and it's an infinite supply, and it doesn't get less. Like, all I got to do is just, if I'm bored of this, just change focuses, and now I get to have that drug of bettering my best again. And it's it empowers me in a way that's hard to replicate, so much so that I've actually synced up my entire business cycle with my training cycle for running. I actually do all of my big pushes simultaneously as I'm pushing my physical self to my limit, because I discovered when I'm struggling on one, rarely do both of them struggle simultaneously, and the other can actually support the other. For me, as the head of both of those organizations, me incorporated and my coaching company incorporated, it really, really helps to channel that from one to the other. And it's fun. It's fun.
It's awesome too. A good job finding that correlation too. A lot of people are trying to find balance, which is another word that I had like a 3-hour training on and they still couldn't crack it. Like, some of these words we're going to get into was really great. I want to go back to, I want to also just, reiterate your correctness on how everyone is right and everyone is wrong at the same time. You know, I just did that training the other day just to show guys. You did the water bottle, and then I did the 6 or the 9. Remember that one? Where, like, to me it's a 9, but to you it's a 6. You know, or some people like it's a B, or it's a music note. Like, who's right? Well, like, to me, this is a 9. Well, you'll watch people who do that same thing where they're like, it's a 9, and then go into judgment. It's a 9, you fucking idiot. You don't know your numbers. You're stupid. You're a moron. And they just go into hate, blame, shame, and judgment. And if you just take a second of humility and go, well, let me walk over to your side. Well, holy shit, it is a 6. Well, come over here. I want to show you something. Let me look at my side. Look, it's a 9 over here. And you're like, well, I guess it was the whole time, huh? And we don't have enough of that grace and humility to go, well, maybe. What are you looking at?
Well, it gets to the, you know, it's funny. We talk about these lessons were given to us when we're younger. Like, this lesson was given to me as a kid. Like, this is my dad's copy I read as a kid. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Yeah, that went in one ear and right out the other. Like,
Couldn't
I
grab
was
it
told,
yet.
understand their perspective first. Come to find out, wasn't wrong. I insisted on learning that lesson the hard way over 20 years.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely. I like that you noticed that, like, the answers were always there. We just weren't ready to handle them, which leads back to that truth that you were trying to find. I love this word. There's a lot of words I can get into. We're going to get into happiness. You're going to love respect. Some of these words are fucking hilarious. So, truth. You're like your buddy saying the sky is green. As long as we agree, then it becomes green. We can change blue to green right now. We can just change it. And that's why I like the words thing. That was actually a big thing when I started getting into the limiting effects of how our language and words are. That was Alan Watts when I was listening to Alan Watts. Like he'd be the Jordan Peterson of the 70s. Like he was like, that was the guy. And if you were going to eat mushrooms and listen to somebody, it was Alan Watts. And so I remember listening to one of his speeches about how words are nothing. Like everything that we have around us is simply matter. We've just given them labels to make it so we can conceive, but otherwise it's just matter. Like in the grand scheme of creation of all things, these are just molecules and stuff that we have just said the shape of this equals this to us. And that's how we communicate, which also leads to you trying to have the conversation of authenticity and not being able to do it because we're using a limited language to explain a feeling. Good luck.
A
lot of times people get stuck on this one. Alan Watts is a good place to go.
I was listening to a video the other day while I was running an Eckhart Tolle one, but he said he was talking about when a child, says, "What is this?" talking to a flower, and he says, "Don't say it is a flower. Say it's called a flower, or it not is a rose. It's called a rose." He's like, that little difference changes it because it is not a flower. That would be to reduce all that it is into this word, which wouldn't be an accurate representation of what it is, And I thought that subtle shifted how I might communicate something to somebody. And that's where it gets into this lost in translation bit where I've realized not only do me and somebody else, we have to make sure vocabulary, the simplest of vocabulary means the same thing. We have to use it in the right order with the right intonation. And we have to figure out how to explain it in a way that is true to ourselves. Because sometimes what I've realized is I say something, they understood what I said, but I didn't say it that was true to what I thought. Therefore, I think they didn't understand me, but they understood me perfectly. I didn't understand myself sometimes.
Or they understood their own versions of what you said and called it the same.
And I don't know how I'm supposed to know which is which. Sometimes
you don't. And this leads us to having to trust that they got it, even though they got a totally different thing out of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's right.
Yeah.
Everybody's wrong. Because what you just started doing with the limiting words that we have there and the way that we use it, even adding one letter changes everything. Even one typo on a text message changes the whole entire message. I make jokes and stuff with these things. If she's like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I was like, "Hey," she's like, "Who are you with right now? Is my sister there or whatever?" And I'm like, "I am now with your sister." She'd be like, "Wait, what? Wait, no, I hit the W. It was next to the T. I meant I'm not with your sister. I'm not even there." But that one letter made it seem like now I'm with her. Oh, listen, the typos are hilarious. Also, another one, when I get into the training that you are always right, this gets into the belief system stuff. That's why it's at the core with the words that we use. Just adding a T to a word can change everything. You're like, I can't do that. Well, let's take that T out of there. Well, now I can do that.
Drop it.
It's amazing how one little tweak that we do to this belief system can change our entire perception on life. Everything is wrapped up in the filters that we use in our belief systems, but people don't have enough awareness of catching that over 80% of your belief systems, and I'm being conservative, over 80%, if not considerably more, are beliefs that are not yours, that you approved of. Especially you're not good enough. Your ideas are stupid. That'll never work. That's really a dumb idea. Nobody will listen to you. That's imposter. You're going to be found out. All of these things that get put in there are just beliefs from somebody else's limiting belief system that we've agreed to. These are just the words that we allowed to become our filters for how we see the world.
False information propagates, I've realized, just as easily as true information, because so many people, they have no filter in place to discern which is which.
They don't challenge it.
I was eating the other day at lunch by myself, and I heard there's a college town where I live, so it's that time of year where all the college kids show up, and there's a whole bunch of them all over everywhere. And they were there at the restaurant, and I could just hear them right next to me. They were loud, but just good old time. I was just enjoying listening to them. It was fun. And right as I'm getting ready to leave, one of them turns to the very clear social leader in the group, and he says, "Hey, what's the difference between black beans and pinto beans? Not refried, just black and pinto." And the leader, he's looking at it, and I could tell right away. I'm like, "Just say it, man. Just say I don't know. Just say it. Just say it. You can do it. Just say I don't know." He didn't do that. He goes, "Well, one, it's more proteins in the pinto beans than the." They're identical. And so I'm listening. I'm like, is anybody going to say, anybody can challenge, question? It was just very amusing to watch. And as they're doing it, as I was walking away, I said, "Hey, by the way, guys, pinto beans, black beans, nutritionally almost identical." And they walked away. But it's just like, it was interesting watching how this information was about to propagate. No one was going to challenge it, because what I've realized is a lot of our beliefs, they're given to us by someone that is in a position of authority, and authority doesn't necessarily mean teacher. Sometimes it's just the leader of your friend group, and they can implant an idea in your mind. And I started thinking of it in terms of the maybe. And an example I use when I'm doing this work with kind of helping people wrap their head around this is I'll say, look, imagine a person, they marry somebody who, and this happens, where they just sort of transform after you're married. They were one way, after you're married, they're another way. And let's say this person is particularly cruel, and they say mean things about you all the time. And you had really good self-confidence going into this. And let's say they just saying things like, "Why'd you do that? Gosh, you're so dumb." And you brush it away. And then they say it again another day, and like, "Gosh, don't you ever listen?" And you brush it away. And they're like, "Gosh, you're such an idiot. You never listen." And you brush it away. And then, well, the problem is, after a year of that, you finally are like, "I don't believe this, but he really or she really believes this. What if?" And I realize that's the crack that lets the belief from the conscious into the subconscious. What if? And now that belief gets in there and it takes root, and it can poison somebody. And that's where it feels like a lot of us, we just don't even realize we're letting that happen to us. I didn't. That story was my first marriage. That's what happened to me.
I like that you called it the maybe. Like, and this is powerful stuff. I actually did a video on how commitment changes the dynamics for your relationship, because the more commitment that a person gives, it seems like the entire relationship starts to go downhill. Like, why can't we be like we were when we were dating? I chose you for a reason, and now we're together and it's completely different. Like, what happened? But the maybe, I'm going to keep it on the doubt category. The maybe is powerful. And it's interesting how, like, when you have let somebody inside the inner walls, when you let them inside the defense system, and then that person gets free reign to start just kind of reorganizing the way that they want to do things without ever having you challenge that authority. Because I allowed you in my heart means I don't ever challenge you. Guys, get it together. You can start challenging these things, because just because somebody says I'm committed to you doesn't mean they get free reign to destroy you.
Yeah. That was a hard lesson. I had to learn that. That's another one of those lessons I had to learn the hard way.
You probably didn't have boundaries at that time, did you?
Oh, boundaries? What's that?
What is that?
People packaging people food comes in?
Yeah, they still don't know what that means. Yeah, I have to teach that. Like, it's in lesson 3 for us. Like, you have to get into knowing what that even is.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it is okay to say, "I love you, but you can't treat me that way and expect me to stay."
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was okay to say to somebody, because no one told me. And it's such a simple thing. Like, and then when I started thinking, I'm like, well, am I not supposed to say it? Because these are those conversations behind closed doors that people don't talk about.
Correct.
And so they don't become normalized. Enforcement of boundaries for me growing up was not a normalized thing. And it was, I had to I look at it much the same way as I did personal finance. I'm doing so much better than my parents. My parents are doing better than their parents and them before theirs, right? So we're always learning, and I'm trying to grow it. And my parents, my dad especially, we got really, really good at earning money. He knew how to earn money, and he taught me how to earn money. And I was able to take that lesson. What he didn't teach me how to do was manage money. And so right away in my 20s, I got myself in debt, made a bunch of boneheaded financial choices because I didn't know any better and I didn't know how to earn money yet. So I didn't know how to out earn my problem, which is probably a blessing in disguise. I might have just made a bigger hole. And so, but I had to break it all down and go, I don't know how to do this. No one told me how to do it. And it's okay that no one told me how, because no one comes out of the womb knowing how to balance a checkbook. Like, you had to learn it. And I realized it's the same thing with things like boundaries. It's the same thing with anger. No one taught me it is okay to be angry, but there's an appropriate way and an inappropriate way to express it. And I was just told, don't be angry. That's what I tried to do. And every time I thought I was angry, I thought I did something wrong.
Suppression leads to expression, though.
Right.
You're going to blow up at some point, man.
Yeah. Well, when you turn that inwards for too long, it makes you sad.
Yeah. Well, one of them's going to come out. It's either going to be sadness or it's going to be rage. One of the two cracks out at some point. The volcano blows up. Yeah, you're not wrong. And especially in relationships, people, they don't realize the power in autonomy. They don't understand it. They think that the higher commitment means I have to be all in on this, where I actually have created such a codependent dynamic, I can't even hold a boundary anymore. But there does have to be a degree where, like, if you're abusing me, I'm not going to stay, and I can actually go. And like, you have to be able to hold those lines, because it seems like when I even writing my first book, when I was getting into consequences, like the choices that people make, my first book is Everything is a Choice. When we get into the choices of things, people will go as far as they can until there's a consequence. Just period. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Even in a relationship, people will push the limit until someone goes, stop, that's my limit. And if you don't stop, here's the consequence of creating that choice. There's an outcome. There's going to be a causality here. There's going to be a cause and effect. Something happens next. If you don't have the ability to do that, you can't enforce anything. And if you've dug yourself into a hole that I actually can't leave, then there is no consequence to treating you poorly, in which case people just will. I wish that it wasn't the case, but people respect people who respect themselves. And this is the difference between making a demand and holding the line. There's a difference. Telling you can't talk to me that way. Well, that's a demand. If you talk to me that way, I am going to bounce out of here and you're going to have to start all over again. Do you really want that? Because we can either respect each other and grow, or you can keep disrespecting our dynamic and there won't be one anymore. That's not a threat. You should never threaten divorce. People try and make up rules to protect themselves. You should never say divorce. It's like, if you're being an unworthy person in our relationship, not based on my judgment, but based on our agreements, well, then I'm not going to stay with someone who doesn't have the base level loyalty to stick to our own agreements, because people think the only thing that breaks vows is cheating. But what happened to honor each other? What happened to give trust? What happened to love? What happened to, be there in sickness and in health, when it all becomes highly subjective, when, well, why should I? Becomes even one of the questions that even hit the table. It's a good question. Why should you?
Yeah. Well, something I started thinking of, relationships was a big part of my journey too, because in my past, I didn't have the best ones. And I have to be honest. I mean, the common denominator was me. So like, that doesn't absolve anybody else in the relationship of their own issues, but Correct. I didn't figure it out either. And so, and I was often asking them to do something that I wasn't willing to do. Hey, calm down in the middle of a fight when I'm not calming down. Like, how is that fair? It'll be easy for me to calm down if you calm down. It's like, wait, no. Why don't I calm down and make it easy for them?
I'm going to give you all the power.
Right. So I'm in a relationship now, been in it for a little while, and it was something I had to really think about. And it's interesting you talked about. I've noticed, because I am more self-aware now than I have been, every time the relationship took that next level of seriousness, we let each other into the next layer of the walls of our heart, being more vulnerable, And I realized what happens is every time, because we're both hurt, I've been hurt, you get scared and you want to run away. And it's like, no, go towards the fear. Let it be. Like, go into it. But I realized in those battles, I'm getting to those deeper layers within. I discovered something that I had a theory, but I didn't know until I lived it. And a few things. First is I'll never accept love greater than the amount of love I show myself. Like it can come at me. I'll just explain it away. I won't let them in.
Correct.
So I had to love myself, but I also had realized I have to be enough. Like I have to be happy by myself and have everything I need. And what I realized is I want to be the best version of myself I possibly can be and show up to the relationship as my most authentic version, not my best, my authentic. And if my authentic ain't best enough, better change my authentic. And so get it to where I want it, decide how the kind of man I want to be, and then be that. And then the other person should add to my happiness. The relationship should make something greater that couldn't exist without it, but not because I'll be unhappy without it. And I realized that was the equivalent of the same day as I achieved a certain level of financial success where I don't have the pressure to work the way I used to. And all of a sudden I could be like, I'm not going to take that anymore because I don't have to, because I'm enough. I have enough to say no to this. But I had to do the work to get there. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm seeing like the relationships, like there's all these little aspects of it that don't get talked about. No one told me and I didn't know to ask. So I can't fault anyone.
No, it's not. It's not a blame, shame, or a judgment on that one. But people are taught that you're supposed to be in a relationship. It has to be codependent, and that's a very dangerous game that people are taught. They're like, you have to, your happiness and your joy and your love and all of these things are all completely dependent on another person. This is the whole Jerry Maguire. You complete me. It's like, no, don't do that. No, because you're right. People have an expectation that people need to do things. They need to. They better do it. You need to love me. You need to do that. It's like, I love that idea. Sounds good. Can you? And a lot of people don't even like themselves, let alone love themselves. And so you don't even like yourself. The shame stack that you throw on top of yourself in your mind is so brutal that you wouldn't even be friends with you. And yet you expect others to love you when you can't even be nice to yourself. What an interesting game.
An interesting one. And that's exactly the game I was playing. Except I wasn't demanding people loved me. I took it a different way. I went, well, of course they don't.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, sir.
Exactly.
Well, why would they? I'll make sure that this fails.
I don't have any good reasons. I need someone else to come tell me I'm doing okay.
Validation from external. Of course. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah. When it shifted to intrinsic, a lot of things changed. I'm going to bring it back to something we were talking about earlier, because I'm at a place now where some of these internal shifts people notice. And so they'll just sometimes ask like, hey, what do you read? What do you think about? Because they're just curious, right?
Sure.
I think it's just people are. I do the same thing. And, I just lost my train of thought. It just fluttered away.
It'll come back. We'll trigger it again.
It'll come back. Oh man, I love it when that happens. It just leaves.
It happens all the time. It's because we're being real, man. It happens all the time. Also, you were doing a beautiful setup too. So I do that all the time. Or I have let me let you know, I'm about to drop a bomb on you, Chris. And it's going to be the most beautiful bomb that opens up the whole, what was the bomb? Damn it. I forgot I was telling you about what it's going to be. I do it all the time. So I'm going to go back to the love myself.
Go ahead.
I'll see if we can trigger it again. You were going into love myself, the existentially, the external validation, and this is how I'm going to receive love. You started getting intrinsic. People start asking you, what are you doing that's so subtle with this new intrinsic change? There it is.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. People started noticing, and they're asking me, what do I do? And the answer I give everybody, because, I try to give the answer that I think is relevant to the person in front of me, because I usually only have a minute, so I got to pick. But the one that always makes the cut when I'm making their top 3, top 5 list is You got to work on how you talk to yourself 100% of the time on the inside and the outside. And it includes what your ears take in and your eyes read too.
Yeah.
And I try to stress it with you. I'm like, it is so crazy simple to just watch what you think, say, and listen to and read in a moment. But what makes it, just like it's easy to take one step in a marathon, but what makes it hard is the volume and the duration. And it's sort of like, so you got to make it simple. You got to make it easy because you got to do this for a long, long time until it becomes automatic. And it's going to take, and I was combating against decades of an old way of talking to myself. And it took years of conscious, persistent effort. But I've noticed in my world of weight loss, people would rather give up food than give up how they talk to themselves.
There's a lot of things they would give up before the way they speak. They don't have the awareness of it either. So this is the first skill we teach is the awareness, because they don't even know what they don't know. So they can't make a choice they don't know exists. I can't catch myself talk if I don't even recognize it.
Well, true. Yes. The awareness is, and it is, the awareness is definitely that first step. But I've noticed awareness alone doesn't guarantee a step towards the next step. Sometimes it seems like it frightens people when they have that awareness moment.
Then we found fear, and then we fight fear then. So then this is why having the awareness just reveals what the battle is. But then once you know what battle it is, then we can go ahead and train for what monster that is. Fear is very beatable. No different than how you talk to yourself is actually the recipe for depression. It's also the cure. This is where people don't understand when it comes to depression. When I've ever worked with anybody out of depression, you have to remember it didn't happen overnight. It's something that it happens over a long period of time. And at the core of every single person I see who's been severely depressed is a massive shame stack for self-talk. And you are correct, where if you can catch that self-talk, what are you saying to yourself? Even on the map, the depression piece is connected to doubt. They are both, that's their kindred spirit with each other. And they don't understand doubt is an enemy that comes in from outside. And depression is how you grieve and go through loss. One of them, if triggered, can let the other one in free rent, just jump on in. And so understanding these pieces, the shame stack goes into your depression. I'm a piece of shit. I'm not good enough. No one's going to love me. I'm not worthy. Why would anybody care about me? Nobody's self-fulfilling prophecy of so I don't love me. Why would anyone love me? You start doing the shame stack, and the difference is, and people confuse guilt and shame often. Well, they're not the same. Guilt is feeling bad for something you did or didn't do. Shame is feeling bad for who you are. And when people start hating who they are, then they start beating themselves up, and it starts gathering weight until eventually you see somebody looking like Atlas, holding the weight of the world on their shoulders. And once they have that weight on them, moving is hard. This is where apathy kicks in. I have stacked so much negative self-talk on myself that I can't even get out of bed. I can't even move. I don't even want to go to the bathroom, let alone call somebody or go to the gym or go to work. I don't want to do anything, because you start becoming the personification of doubt itself. So the definition, if you want to beat doubt, I'll show you how to kill doubt in one sentence. Doubt itself offers nothing but takes everything. When you get into the depression stack and you start stacking for a long period of time the negative self-talk, you become the personification of doubt itself. Since doubt offers nothing but takes everything, what happens is you become nothing, and it takes from you everything. This is apathy incarnate.
You're talking about you're beginning to identify with the emotion of doubt?
You become the personification of it. Yeah, you are now doubt. You have no motivation. There's no drive, there's no goal, there's no purpose. Now you combine knowing with that system, this is where you start getting a real clusterfuck. Because if you have the knowledge and understanding of what it is, but you're stuck in apathy because you don't know how to beat the negative self-talk, you go ahead and throw fear magnified on top of apathy. Well, this is somebody who doesn't have the motivation or energy to get up, who knows all of the things that are wrong and has extreme anxiety on top of depression. Brutal combination. of knowing the answers, but not having the ability to do anything about it. Now, it's curable if you're able to understand the self-talk. What you are saying is simple, but people confuse simple and easy often. It is not the same. Build a house, Chris. Building a house. You're like, oh, that sounds simple. I'd like a house. Well, there's masonry, there's plumbing, electrical, there's carpentry, there's some sort of there's going to be some sort of blueprint here. And I'm not, an engineer on this. I don't know how to do this. I'm not an architect, so there's a lot of pieces here, and I don't know what order they go in or how to do them. Simple and easy are not the same thing very often. Catch your negative self-talk. Well, that sounds simple. I've never done it before because it's just been on autopilot. Well, we better challenge your default program. But otherwise, you're just going to keep digging yourself into a hole. And we call depression, before intervention. So it's prevention before intervention. It's the only way I can say to beat it. Because at some point, if you get stuck too deep, someone's got to pull you out. You can't do it. It's going to take a long time to pull yourself out. But if you can catch it beforehand, like you can get it yourself.
That prevention part, I think, is huge. I've tried to ingrain that into my coaching philosophy and how I teach things. Emotional eating is a major part of what I do. I specialize in those who need to lose 100+ pounds. So, I mean, we're talking, if you got to lose 100+ pounds, we have a systemic challenge here. This is not just, I need to learn a little bit, count my calories for a couple of weeks. It's a big problem. With that, oh wow, I just lost my train of thought again. That is so funny. That's twice. That does not normally happen twice.
You got this. So you got into
again, we're hanging out in the fringes. So a lot of this is stuff I don't say. So I don't have it's interesting to kind of feel this. I'm not as rehearsed.
We're going to have fun. We're going to keep pushing the limits because I have a place you're going to love where I go that I hope helps a lot of the people with emotional eating and how we beat it. But you were talking about prevention to emotional eating.
Yes.
Got it.
It's people often will ask me, like, Chris, how do I stop emotional eating? And I say, well, let's simplify this. How do you stop boredom eating? Well, that's an easy one. Stop being bored. Like, just stop being bored. And so it's like, if you're emotional eating, if you're turning to food, you're doing it for a reason. The food is not the problem. It's the symptom. The overeating is the byproduct. The weight is a byproduct of something else. So when you diet, all you're doing is taking an aspirin for a headache. You're getting rid of the byproducts that come as a result of engaging in this behavior, but you're still preserving the behavior because you can lose 100 pounds and still binge eat. And like, I see people do it all the time. And so they just do it in a different way. They figure out how to binge eat and lose weight. And so, but I realize what we have to always do is start rolling it and going backwards to like, what brought you here in the first place? That made you feel the genuine and true desire, not fake desire, but actual desire to engage in overeating. Like, and to realize that you're probably actually being reasonable to yourself in that moment based on how you see things. And it's like, we got to, and so I look at it as a metaphorical line. I call it the loss of control threshold, is you're always under control until you're not. The metaphor I use is driving a car on icy roads. You can be completely in control until instantly you are no longer in control going down a hill. You now have to sacrifice it. So you have to do all the growth on both sides of the line, both while you're still in control and just as you've lost control. Everything past that, Lord help us, we do the best we can. But the goal is not to solve the problem over here. It's to solve it over there. And so, yeah, it's a different way of approaching these things. But what I've noticed is if I do it in a business setting, everybody's like, oh yeah, root cause. Yeah, you dig to the core thing that's causing the problem and you stop the output that we don't like. Perfect. Well, what about in your personal life? What are you talking about? No. If my factory that's supposed to make blue pens is making black pens, I'm not going to go fix the assembly line. I'm just going to take every pen apart and put a different ink cartridge in each one of them. It's like, wait, no, don't do that. But that's what we want to do in our personal lives, I've realized.
I love this. I'm gonna jump on with it. I'm gonna show you the way you just explained that through the actual method that I use for this, because you are right. And so This is how people, I'm going to show you how people try and treat symptoms and go right to the answer, but the answer is not the solution. And this is why people still struggle. Even if you read Atomic Habits and things like this, there's still the missing piece that like the answer is not the solution. So I'll show you the pathway to help people rip out that belief system of I am an emotional eater, because you understand the concept is saying I am an emotional eater means my belief system is that's what I am. This is my identity. Now, come on, thing. I'm trying to share screen and it is giving me the hardest time. Do the thing. So in any case, people are going to start off with their identity. You think you're an emotional eater? Then you are an emotional eater. So let's go ahead and say you're not an emotional eater. Now you're not an emotional eater. Get it? And you're like, no, I don't get it. Like, I don't know if this thing is coming up or not. It looks like it's not.
There you go. It just loaded on my end.
Did it?
Or the map did.
Thing. Trying here. Now I can't see me. Or you. Here we go. All right. I got an error message here. You see it?
I see it. It says I'm seeing the map anyway. If that's what you're trying to share.
I am trying to share. Well, in any case, if you can see this, then great. It's not showing up on this, but anyways. So people are going into identity and they're going habits, behaviors, patterns, and they're saying I'm an emotional eater. This is who I am. I am this. The belief system around this, that when I am in any type of boredom or any type of situation, I need to eat because that's what I am. I am an emotional eater. When you live in this system, people want to try and fix it from identity. You're right. The root cause is actually not your identity is the problem. What people aren't realizing is emotional eater comes from emotions. Emotions are in your feelings. Well, what is the thing that's happening? Well, the core comes from something that happened to make you feel bad. You're in your loss system. Now, denial is the nastiest Trojan horse in here. Denial will protect you. There is a reality I do not want to face. I don't like what is. I hate it. Makes me feel bad. I don't like feeling bad. I'll keep bouncing between being super sad about something or getting angry about it or creating alternate realities that I think make it better, like a fantasy world of everything is cool, the rose-colored glasses, or I don't see red flags, or wouldn't it be nice if only this, if only this. But really, you're not facing the reality of what is. When that happens, we go to this guy, your distractions. I need to feel positive. I want happy feelings. My reality makes me unhappy. I don't want to face that. That makes me not happy. I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel good. So I'll go to food. Give me some sweets. Now, this also works with alcohol. This works with drugs. This works with porn. This works with shopping online. You name it. Give me any dopamine rush, even workaholics creating more work. Whatever it is, give me anything to feel good. Well, now I feel good. Even in that reinvigorates my belief that I am an emotional eater because I feel good when I do this, which then makes it so I later feel worse because I know the cognitive dissonance. They're like, what I am and what I am doing isn't right because I feel worse later. But I just want to feel good at any moment. So I'm going to go back to eating more, even if it keeps making me feel worse. Well, where's the root? Like, we see the pieces that are going on here. Is it identity? Is it belief? Is it feelings? Is it distractions? Is it in your loss? People are like, I don't know where the root is. If we can go to what is it that we are hiding from? Remember, the coping mechanisms are what we create when we're going through, we don't have control. And the different pieces are, they're the very, very basic that I have rewritten, and it's going in my next book, is fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Those are the ones that people know of. But what they don't realize is your grieving system is directly associated with your coping mechanisms. Fight response, anger. This is attack. Go on the offensive. Flight response, that's denial. This means run away. This means suppress. This means hide. Depression, surrender. I give up. I got nothing else. I'll just do whatever you want. It's the freeze system. Bargaining is fawning. And people don't understand bargaining. I call that the negotiator. This is where people will try to control the conversations and sacrifice themselves in any way to make it so other people are okay, as if they are in control of other people's feelings. Yeah, I've seen another psychologist who put that fight and flight. These two right here, these two would be considered hit the gas, either moving toward or moving away. Depression would be hit the brakes. I stop completely. Bargaining is both at the same time, both the gas and the brakes. I'm going to go towards the danger, but I'm going to sacrifice in some way to make it so I'm not me, so you're okay. It's a very interesting control system. But each of these is also, how do I navigate through my grief when I don't have control? Now, since I can't deal with the reality of what is, I'm going right to whatever makes me feel best. Emotional eating is just part of a system to make it so there's a part of me I don't like what's happening for real and I can't accept. So I need to feel good in any way, shape, or form. Again, it's the same recipe. The root is what happened in your life that hurt too bad to deal with. And let's kill that thing, man. Let's face it. What is it? What is the thing that made it so I had to create a system that makes me believe that I'm an emotional eater in order to survive? Pretty crazy, right? And start going in there. Then I can fight whatever battle comes in. Is it distractions? Is it doubt? Is it excuses? Is it fear? What are the things that we created to make it so I won't accept the reality of this?
Yeah, this part which you're talking about, getting to that root cause, it's the part where I don't say it explicitly in what I do with my world. But I know it's a part of it. Because again, if a person has 100+ pounds to lose, the odds of emotional eating being a component are higher. Not saying it's an absolute. It's not, but it definitely is there for many. And with that, I've noticed a lot of people want to say it's because I love this food too much. I'm like, it's not. Because people emotionally eat on garbage, like not like literal garbage, and like just food that's not good. Even they'll agree it's not that good, and you won't even enjoy it. I used to engage in it. You just reach a point where you're just honestly not even enjoying the act of eating anymore. But you still keep eating, and I discovered that to solve that, we can't diet it away because that's all just mitigation and prevention methods. Putting a wall up between you, and I'm like, yeah, you're an adult with a car and a debit card. You can pretty much get around anything. So eventually you'll get around it. You just, if the stress is little, the pressure will take longer to build up than if it's a big stress. But it will pop at some point. And when I lost 125 pounds, and I knew the statistics. I knew the odds of weight regain were high, and I know that the deck stacked against me at this point. But like, that doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and just take it. I'm not going to lay down. But I realized that doing this deep inner emotional work is important. So even long after I lost my weight, I still am doing the work of attempting to root out the reasons why I turned to food, doing the work, doing the inner work, making peace with it, moving past it, whatever is necessary, depending on what it is, so that it doesn't sneak up and get me. Because I realized I could just let this stuff show up on its terms, or I could just turn around and go after it and do it on mine. And I realized my terms are always better because I can schedule it sometimes. So
it's how you took control back. It's not given back. You took it back. I always think it's good
they don't want to face it.
Yeah, well, they won't because they don't know how to fight it. And this is why the warrior's way is what it is. I'll teach you how to beat fear or doubt or denial, anger. I'll teach you how they work, and I'll show you the weak spot. They're not that tough when you know what it is. But people still just call it whatever they believe it is, and then they give it impossible names to make it so it's unbeatable. They're not. They're all beatable. Everything. Anxiety, beatable. I can beat it in one day with you. Like, people just have the wrong systems in place. They think it's the symptoms themselves. But if you believe it's beatable, it is. And I have people who are like, dude, I did what you said, and I no longer need the medication because the issue that I had doesn't happen anymore. And my belief system around it has become something positive, not negative. So I don't have panic attacks anymore. And I'm like, right on. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's just you're untrained in a superpower. But people are told that they're a disorder. They're told that they're a dysfunction. They're told there's something wrong with them. And because of that belief from somebody who has a degree or a certification or a white coat, that means that I don't have the right to challenge that I am a disorder because somebody who just saw me for 5 minutes, threw some medication at me, said that I have an issue. They just don't want to do the
Yeah.
work to have you actually cure it.
Well, we get in my studies of attempting to understand the natural resistance of humans to change, I've come across two quotes that have always been resonating that have been my favorites with it. One is C.S. Lewis will often choose a familiar captivity over an unfamiliar freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized even, and then the second part being from Orson Scott Card, we question all our beliefs except for those we truly believe and those we never think to question.
Yeah, it goes right to Bernard Hayes for me. Yeah, same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, the answers to our problems lie in the shadows of our mind that we don't want to look at because we made the shadows. And
we created all of it. Yes.
Yeah, we tucked it away, and I was raised Mormon, which was it's a religion that affects a lot on how you think things, and I've had to tell people, I'm like, yes, I did in fact lie to myself and deceive myself. I did. Like, I genuinely would believe things that I no longer believe. And I genuinely was faced with evidence of things that I explained away, that later I changed my mind on. And, I've realized, and this isn't to say what's right or wrong to anybody else. That's not my mission with anything like that. It's just to say that, just because we've been told something our entire life by every position of authority in our life, it doesn't make it true. Correct.
Yet, do you have the courage to challenge the beliefs that others are trying to put on you, especially in authority?
It's hard. Our socio-cultural setting has the potential to have a very real grip on an individual's identity, I've come to see.
Correct. Because we allow it. Mm-hmm. There's no challenge. We don't give any pushback. If somebody says you should be like this, and they go, okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting with that challenging, how it just going, wait a minute. Is there another option here? Is there another way I can see this? Just stopping and doing that has caused my life to go in so many different wonderful directions just by going, wait a minute, hold on. I was about to pick between an option of one. Like, maybe get 2 or 3 more choices on the table on how I'm going to see this, and then make a conscious choice.
Correct. This is the thing with change. You want to know why people struggle with change so much? Is it's associated to loss. No matter what it is, what it used to be is not that anymore. Change is just loss. And so even if it's an upgrade, even if it's better, the way it used to be isn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. That's why people struggle with change, is its loss. But it's really funny that we as humans are so bad at change when every single thing that exists is going to change. Nothing that exists stays the same. Even mountains and trees and forests. It's always evolving. Everything is changing at all time. Even Marcus Aurelius had this. He was saying, like, everything is meant to change. It's ironic that we as humans are so terrible at the inevitable. How silly is that?
Right. I started thinking of it because I was trying to articulate what you were describing. And I started thinking, I'm like, life has an attrition. There's a decay rate. Things just fall apart and move beyond. Every good season comes to an end. So does every bad. Every memory has an end, but it's the next beginning. I started thinking about that more, realizing, as we get older, we naturally have to let go of things. I was watching my girlfriend's daughter. She's growing up, and one day we were driving, and I was like, "What do you think about growing up?" She's like, "It sucks." I'm like, "What? Why?" She goes, "Adults are so serious. I just want to keep having fun. I just want to be silly." I was like, "Yeah, I get that." Because she's growing up and she's feeling these things slip away. She reached the age and you can't do the sleepovers with the boys anymore. And it's like, we got to stop that. And it's like, well, I don't understand. Why am I losing this? And, that's a natural part of growing up. We let go of the toys as we move on to the next level of toys and the new gadgets and gizmos and whatnot. But I think sometimes it happens with some people for all sorts of reasons. We reach a place where it's like, I just can't lose anymore. And I'm just going to hang on to everything I have as it is. Mm-hmm. But because change is the constant, I've realized if we try to stay the same, we don't stay the same, we stagnate. And we regress, and our comfort zone shrinks inward and inward and inward and inward. And it's like the more we resist change, the more we resist what is, the more unhappiness I've noticed I felt in my life, the more, at a minimum, certainly more unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I've just accepted that this thing that I've loved so very much, it is now time for it to end, and it's the new thing. And I realized the antidote to that fear of loss is presence, being in the here and the now, in the moment, because in this moment, I'm not losing much. I'm usually not losing anything. I'm just enjoying. And I can, if I bring the emotion of gratitude to the present for whatever's happening, this is going to sound nuts, but literally when I'm in a fight with my girlfriend, or if I'm having a work problem, or if I've hurt myself, I literally say to myself, I am so glad we're having this right now. I don't know how this is going to help, but I'm grateful I'm here, because you know what? If she were to die, I would give nothing more than to be back in an argument again.
Correct.
I'm not going to sit here and wish this moment didn't exist. Yes, it's incredibly unpleasant. And yes, I very much would be okay if this movement moved through me and another one, and we got to the next one. I'd be okay with that. But I'm still going to appreciate the one I'm in, because it's where I'm at. And let's do the best I can here. And in my journey, I actually sold probably about 80% of my possessions. I went from a 4-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom condo, because I literally had to just choose. I looked around one day and realized I wasn't letting go. And I was creating all these anchors in my life. And it's just like I needed to just start letting go. And it was amazing. As I started letting go, new things started taking its place. But because I was doing it on purpose, they served me better because I was older. I learned a bit more than when I acquired things when I was 20. And not just possessions, but ideas too.
It's awesome. Yeah. Here's a fun thing for you, especially when it comes to the idea of change and being lost. What's cool about this is when I did a survey with do people change, they would struggle, just like you said. Oh, the things that I had are now gone and I lost those things, and people don't change. And no, the change is bad. I don't like change. But when you just say the word evolve, like you're evolving. People, for some reason, when you say, yeah, you're evolving, they feel good. It feels like progress. It's the same thing. It's just I don't associate it with loss. I associate it with growth. And this is the difference of you going like, I had 4 bedrooms of stuff that I got rid of. I lost that stuff. No, you just evolved out of the need for them. You've gone further ahead. You've become stronger. You don't need as many crutches. You know what I mean? And so even the same thing, if you just say I've evolved versus, oh, everything changes, it takes it from I'm losing something in my routine to now I'm evolving into a better version of myself. It's really interesting how people can just grab that so quickly versus saying, well, change is inevitable, so suck it up. Now, you tapped into something beautiful. The definition of happiness itself is something that people have been like finding elusive for quite a long time. And you see the experts explain happiness in very convoluted ways when we know that this is a subjective terminology to begin with. What is happiness? You know, and so you go to the experts, and like, this is where at some point I'm going to piss Arthur off, but you'll see Arthur C. Brooks, who's a Harvard professor, and you watch his videos, who teaches happiness. And it's like, okay, well, happiness by itself is a highly subjective term. We all have a different answer. But if you want the answer, you just have to A, get into Harvard, B, be the first ones to sign up for this sold out class that's in minutes, and then C, you learn his 3 techniques for happiness. You know what they are? Satisfaction, enjoyment, and purpose. And I'm like, wait a second. Did you just tell me the definition of happiness is 3 more subjective terminologies? And I have to get into Harvard to break down 4 now subjective terms? Listen, I know people who have no idea what your definition is who are happy as hell. So I don't think that's the answer. But you're seeing people trying to quantify this thing that if you just take a moment and you look at, I created a definition for this, which I'd like you to hear and then challenge. The definition that I have for happiness, and this will be my debate, is the awareness of the blips in life that are found in nouns/verbs. And what that means is, did you even notice that in the present that you are in a blip? And a blip is by definition a moment that is meant to be temporary. It will be here and it will go. It could be seconds, it could be minutes, hours, days, but it'll at some point be done. And we measure this in our life, and this is the timeline that we live in, our time that we have. And nouns are people, places, things. Verbs are things that we love to do or things that we're doing. In which case, did you have presence of the temporary, beautiful moments in your timeline when they were happening with people, places, things, or stuff you like to do? Did you even know you were in it? In fact, right now, Chris, we're in a blip right now. We are in a moment. People are listening to this way later, but it is 8/11/23. It's 5:16 p.m. Central Time. We are in a blip together at this very moment. And even this awesome conversation, at some point we will say I do and it'll be over. But we got to have this beautiful, amazing moment together. And if we have presence in the present, we can see we're in blips all the time. Even an argument with my girl, I'm so grateful that she's still here to argue with, because if something did happen, I would miss the arguments too. Happened with even my dogs that were killed. I'd give anything to have chewed up socks right now. But he got hit by a car and killed.
Yeah. When death touches you, it has a way of reframing that, I think. Sometimes
wakes you up a little bit, man.
A little clearer.
Well, that's honor and meaning. And this is how we help people through coping when it gets to like death, when you work to the race to acceptance, because your grieving cycle is there. And so when we go through the death part, finding honor and meaning, a lot of times I miss my mother, I miss my grandmother, I miss my grandfather, whatever it may be. If you're going, hey, I know that you miss them, but if you could ask them right now, how could I honor you with the life that I have when you don't have those minutes anymore? Do you think their answer would be mope around, bitch and complain, be whiny all the time, waste your minutes? Or would they say, live your life to the fullest and enjoy every minute you've got? Because I don't have any more. And I want you to live the fullest life you can. How would you honor the connection and the love and the beautiful moments you had with that person when they were here? Would you just waste more minutes by feeling sad for yourself? Or would you honor them by living to the fullest because they would want that for you?
You know, there's a cemetery here in town where I've got some family that's buried. I used to live right next to it last year, and I would go run in it. It was part of a route I would do. You know, I'm always looking for a safe place without cars, but that one was very important because it's got some of my ancestors in it. And I would tell people, you know, because sometimes people are like, you run in a cemetery? I'm like, you don't understand. I'm like, I'm going here to commune with those that are gone. I'm coming here to show them I'm not wasting what they no longer have. I'm using it. And I'm going to, not to say this is the right way. This is just the way for me. I'm not going to squander my gift, which is my life, these moments and this body that allows me to experience these moments. And it was interesting. One day I got curious, and this is something I've challenged people. I think it's something I think everybody should do. Go find a local cemetery and find someone that was born after you that's already in their box. And then ponder your own existence. Because I guarantee you, probably most people in their box didn't know they were about to be there. And this person came after me and is already gone. Maybe I should not be quite so cavalier. And I found someone. And in that cemetery, actually, I was a little disturbed that it only took me about 5 minutes of hunting to find it. And it did. And you're right. We have to be here in the present. When you gave your definition, I think the only part I might feel differently towards it is the use of the word happy. I think it's more for me as an individual, because it's just I don't want to have a disconnect with the present. And so I try not to I'm not trying to find an emotion in the present, a specific emotion. I'm trying to just find isness, being there, whatever you want to call it. I don't really get too hung up on the word. I just want to be there in whatever state I am and whatever conditions the world are in. Sure, I'm going to do the best I know how in that moment to live that moment. But I don't want to be so eager to get to the next one that I miss that one. And it's, I find for me, it's definitely a peaceful place, because I can be at peace and be happy. I can be at peace and be angry. I can be at peace and be feeling rejected and sad. I can be at peace in any emotion. I'm not always feeling comfortable. Sometimes I'm actually very, very, sometimes I'm feeling a very unpleasant existence in a moment. But I would agree with I agree with what you're saying. It's about those moments, recognizing that every moment is the good old days. It's just as much the good old days now as when I was at 12 in my best friend's living room playing video games. Mm-hmm. It's no different.
We're in one of those moments right now.
Right now, and I'm grateful for it. I'm because this will be the only moment like this. There'll never be this moment again. It's the only one.
Yeah. We'll have other ones, but this will be the only one that's this one.
Correct. There'll only be one first time. So
yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's such a cool thing. I like this cemetery thing, and this is where like even having the awareness piece of like we take our minutes for granted. We take them for granted all the time. We do, and this is where like even when I train distractions, I explain it like Cookie Monster for time. Like it's an endless thing, something that wants to take all your minutes, and it'll take all of them. But how do we measure our life?
All of them.
Well, it's in years, in minutes, and it's in hours. And how many hours did you give to social media where you learned and grew from nothing? If anybody's made it to this point in this podcast, A, you're a fucking legend. And then B, like you had to have learned something because we've taken some fucking bombs and dropped them in here. If you weren't taking notes in this conversation, you are far behind. And Chris, it's awesome to hear where you are in your journey, finding that ascension into peace, because it's a high level belief to get to that level. Because again, most people are still stuck and life is happening to me. And a lot of people are growing into it's happening for me. But to get to the point where I now see that life is happening and you can be an observer without having to be triggered because something is. Like this is an ascended level of balance that most people don't even know exists to get to, or it seems so Buddhist out of touch that I have to be some sort of Shaolin monk on top of a Himalayan mountain for 65 years. Like, no, there's just an acceptance that we have inside of us to give us that like, well, this is happening. Okay. Instead of going like, it's not happening how I want it to. You're still stuck in it happening to you. When you get to that level, it's awesome. And this is why I'm even more excited to get to the point where now it happens through me. That has happened, but now I can convert this into a thing that is now useful for you. And this is that 0.001% of information from the ocean of endless amounts of knowledge that you have gathered so that you can start working it through you to change people's lives forever.
That was good.
It's pretty cool what we're in right now, man.
It is. It's life's an amazing thing. Like it's an amazing thing to be in. And you're right about the not knowing. I'm working on problems. I'm answering questions I didn't even know that were there to be asked just 5 years ago. And it's interesting. We put so much emphasis on growing up as adolescents, teenagers, kids, even to an extent early 20s. But at a certain point, we just sort of like, okay, you're done human now. It's like, no, I'm now seeing there's so much more, and no one's going to shepherd you to it unless you have to kind of take yourself. I mean, but I realize there's so many people that want to help, like so many, but it's like they can't do the work for you. Like all this work, you can't outsource it. Like there's no one you can pay that will do it for you. Like they could give you the answers, but you got to do it yourself.
Yeah, and they just want you to tell them the answers. Tell me the answer. The road to leadership is heavily paved in shit. Like people don't understand this. To be a great leader, you have to go down the shit road, because if people want to help people, you have to have gone through shit. And at some point, someone's going to go, man, I am stuck at this point. You have to go, I know where you're at. I had to go through that at one point. And so there's directions you can go. If you go that way, it's years. This way, it's months. That way is a dead end. This is the way that I found works, but you're able to go any direction. Do you want to know the faster way, or do you just want to do it your way? Nobody will care. But the road to leadership is difficult and is nasty, and it's filled with failure and disappointment and pain and sorrow. And each of these things helps you grow to be effective as a leader. And it's not about what happens, it's how you learn to handle what happens. And this makes you powerful.
Yeah.
And then people will go,
Yeah.
I have to ask you, what's the answer that you found for this? Because I've gone 4 of these different ways and I can't find the direction. And you're like, oh, you're at the point where you have to stop being a human doing. Now it's time to sit down and let it grow and be a human being.
Can I read you something?
Of course, dude. Yeah.
All right. I like to do these fun thought experiments in my journal. And just kind of based on what you said, I thought, so what I did is the journal entry. I went to my favorite park and I just sort of sat down and pulled out my journal. I mean, I literally drove there, did this for 20 minutes and left. Like, this is such a, people just make the time to journal. So
it's important.
I made the space and I showed up and I sat down. I said, all right, what am I going to write about? What needs to get out of my head? And I thought, I know, I'm going to do this thought experiment. I'm going to pretend somebody walks up to me in real life. I'm just here living my life. I'm at this bench and a person walks up to me and says, how do I do what you did? And I'm just going to give them something. I'm going to say something here and send them on their way. And then one day they'll come find me on this bench again. And I'm going to assume they'll do the first thing. So what would be the first 2 things I said? And I said, 1 page for day 1, 1 page for when the student returns back. What would I say? So I kind of set the scene. This is what I came up with. To get my results, you must learn 2 lessons. The first lesson is that time is limited. It's finite. No amount of money can buy back time. It's the one resource we all share in common. If you let it pass with no forward progress, you're not allowing time to serve you. To get my results, you must learn the value of time. The second lesson is the power of action. The smartest person is the one who turns knowledge into doing. You must learn the importance of doing. Knowledge is potential power. Action unlocks the power. You must feel the power of action. You must find joy in the doing and not the result. Of course, there is more beyond these. However, you can't learn either concept till you experience them working together. These concepts must be experientially learned rather than by intellect alone. To learn them but not experience them is proof you have not learned them at all. So now I send pupil away. Pupil comes back, I don't know, whenever later. They figured this out. They say, I've learned this. What's next? Congrats. You have learned the 2 lessons. You now understand the power of small actions made consistently over time. You now know how small actions can create big change when it is paired with time. You should have learned the harmonious lesson of patience. Patience will act as a sustainer. It's the quality that ensures you will wait for 6 months. So when I talk about harmonious, one of the ways I think of things, I should explain that. I think some lessons you learn, like with music, if you played certain notes together, you will hear other notes. They just sort of manifest, for lack of a way to describe it. I've realized lessons in life are revealed much in the same way. You learn 2 things in close proximity. Sometimes a third lesson is revealed. So it is now time to learn the next lesson. The third lesson is the power of belief. Belief is not absolute fact, absolutely. Belief is your conclusions drawn from the thoughts of your mind. Your beliefs create results. You must learn of your beliefs. More importantly, you must identify the source of beliefs. Where did they come from? The fourth lesson is that fear is not your enemy. Fear is you. You are fear. Without fear, you wouldn't know which way to go. Fear loves you. Why do you reject it? You must learn to hear the wisdom fear brings. You do this by learning the harmonious lesson of opposition in all things. There is 2 sides to every story. The truth will be found between them.
This is super fun. I enjoy that a lot. I really do. This is very cool. And I like the experiment itself, because that's a really challenging one to be able to, like how do I quantify a decade's worth of progress and to start here? Like this is, it's an interesting experiment to begin with. And I like the way that you said the way that you have to begin is by understanding that time is limited and you have to be doing something, which will, in essence, create a competence that will build confidence that will help you to continue. But I noticed you said something that struck me too. One of the wildest conversations I had, and I'll share the episode with you was with Maria Callas. I didn't know who she was when I started the podcast. No idea who she was. And by the end, she blew my mind out of the water. It's one of the few times I get my mind blown out of the water. But she said the thing about like the ocean of experience, the ocean of knowledge, like all there is to know can only be experienced. It cannot be read. And even when she was like had an out of body experience into the spirit world and experienced all the knowledge, she came back and tried to write it all down so she could try to share the knowledge that she'd experienced. And it just came out as jarbled mess. She couldn't write it, which led true to the vast knowledge that there is can only be experienced. And you said you can only get the knowledge by doing. You have to do so you can experience what it feels like for that doing. You can't read it in a book. To know thyself. This is why the intro to this is like, if you want to find who you really are, it's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. The experiences that you gather from doing will show you who you really are. And I very much agree with you on the part where the knowledge will be experienced through the action that you put forth with what you know so far. And it will start revealing its own flaws and checks and balances to know thyself. One of my favorite quotes, I call it the Epictetus compass whenever I train my coaches to find where people are at, is that your circumstances do not define you. They reveal you to yourself. And I thought this is one of my favorite quotes for somebody. It's what's happening is not who you are. What's happening shows you who you are. Are you a complainer? Are you judgmental? Are you mean? Are you a crybaby? Are you a blamer? Like who you are is revealed by the circumstances on what you do in those moments. And people aren't aware of the way that they do things on reflex. So here we are trying to say, remember the moments that you have right now are not who you are, but put some action behind it and you'll start to find who you are. I love it. I'm like, yeah, this is what a fucking elbow drop to start with somebody. Cause when are they coming back? I'll tell you after that assignment, I'll see you in 2 years. Like you're not coming back in a week. No, you're going to be like, if you really understand this, you have found action over time. You have found patience. And I like that harmonious thing that you said, cause it's the moment that you see two separate pieces connected to make it so now the picture starts to become more. And like, that's a very cool, the definition you did with the two notes, making another note. That was a really cool explanation. But then you also got into the belief is not fact. And one of the quotes I have of Marcus Aurelius, I got really into Stoicism, so that's why I keep bringing this shit up. Like, I
love Stoicism, so you're good.
He said, everything that we hear is an opinion, not a fact. And everything that we see is a perspective, not the truth. Going back to the way that, like we were talking about the 6 and the 9, or the stuff that we were showing, like the water bottle. Everything that we hear, everything is not a fact. It's an opinion. And everything that we see is a perspective, not the truth. And that's why you said, look at your belief systems. Your belief systems are not facts. It's only based on how much that we know of. And let's be real, even the Socratic method of, if you really look at how much there is to know, I know less than 1% of what there is to know, even if I'm a grand master at anything. In the grand scheme of things, we know nothing. And I watched your video when you talked about humility. Like, we know nothing. And so we have to be able to be open to like, well, I need to learn more. We may not agree, but I'm open to hear because I don't know everything. In fact, for how much there is to know, I know next to nothing at all. With that humility, it'll make it so your belief systems are allowed to be challenged. And our belief systems is the part that we live and die for, but it is also the part that can be changed in 1 second. Like, we don't understand this at first. We live and die by a belief system that we applied by accepting it when we probably should have declined some of these offers. But here I am. Let's say Andrea and we're in a loving relationship right now, and I feel like we're good. And like, no, we have a great relationship and our relationship's so good and we don't argue and things are awesome and we trust each other and everything is good. And all I have to do is be gone and then come back early and catch her in bed with my best friend. Well, that's just one new piece of information. Everything else was still good, but this one new piece of information has just completely altered my entire belief system around my relationship. Being loyal, trustworthy, safe, solid. And not only that, my best friend also betrayed my entire belief system over what a best friend is. One new piece of information, just one new thing, has completely shattered my entire existence. The whole thing is different in just one moment.
That's how I learned time. It was one moment, one word. Mm-hmm. Cancer.
There it is.
My dad.
Changes everything.
1.5 months. It changed everything. All of a sudden, I was looking at my dad who had a countdown timer on his life, and we knew what it was, and there was no changing it, and it was under 2 months.
Damn.
It fundamentally altered how I perceive time. For the first time in my life, I'm saying, we're sitting at the dining room table. We just found out. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I now understand the value of a minute of time.
Yes.
Because we can't get any of these back, and the sand is about to run out of the hourglass.
Powerful,
hard thing
and
to watch.
Terrifying all at the same time is the realization of what it means. Yeah. And this is why those existential moments, and like, man, honor to you. Like, it's so tough to go through the loss. Like when you look at your dad like that and going, damn, like, Dad, I love you, man, but you're going to be gone soon. And for him to sit in and go, shit, like, I'm going to be gone soon. Like, we even though we can understand that our mortality is something that is going to happen. We're going to die. This body is not forever. But when the realization of a countdown timer hits you, talk about wake up call. That's why, like, you hear the songs "Live Like You Were Dying," that kind of stuff. If we could only have the presence and the presence you were speaking of, that is so damn annoying that we have to go through that moment to be able to catch the value of a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And, going through that and having that shift, that's the thing that, here's the cool thing about life. I'll just add a little more color to that story where, like, the shifting, why I shared these lessons, because I realized when I answered the question, I got to thinking, what are the first two beliefs that shifted for me? Because I got to assume if the same two beliefs shift for somebody else, they might have the same results. Maybe. Yeah. Got to start somewhere. So the first one for me was time. But the second lesson was born right after that. I was driving with my dad in this same park I actually did this in. It's my favorite place here. And I asked him if he had any final pieces of advice to give me. That maybe he was waiting to tell me when I was older or after I'd experienced something. You know how sometimes you do that? You sit on a piece of advice to a close person waiting till it's the right time to give it. Mm-hmm. I asked him to suspend the right time and just tell me. And because I knew I'd remember the words. Even if it's 50 years later, 20 years later, 5 years later, a month later, I'd remember the words. He said he'd think about it. And he called me a couple weeks later. And he said, I paraphrased the conversation, but for lack of a better way to summarize a 5-minute conversation, he said, if there's something you want, go for it, ask for it. And if you don't get it, move on. Stop waiting around for things. So I learned that time is finite and I can't let it go to waste. And I learned if you want something, you've got to stop waiting for the perfect time because it's never coming. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing. The perfect time is a year ago. The next perfect time is now. So we start. And it was in that I discovered, when I talk about that harmonious lesson of patience, that's how I learned it, is because I never set out to learn patience. I set out to learn how to do and to not waste time. In doing that, I discovered I am a patient person, even though on the inside, I don't feel like a patient person. Nuh-uh. I had to work on that presence thing. I hadn't got there yet. And so I realized it's those actions. I started to see, like, if I act like a patient person, even if I have not yet become the patient person, I get the benefits of being a patient person. And it really helped. And it's sort of how I go through those thought experiments, is I really try to think of those past experiences in life and give words to the lessons I learned. Because as I said earlier, I'm always trying to figure out how to take what I think and put it in words that I feel that do it justice. And it's hard.
It's hard to do that.
Sometimes.
And even still, like, honor for what you just found, like that was finding the meaning for like that lesson, which is what all things have. Even the toughest of lessons for that one has a meaning. But then the other question would be, if you could ask your dad, how does he want you to live? How would you honor him in him being able to say, I have the answer? Like, don't wait, do it. Yeah. Don't wait. Like, it's right now is the time.
Honoring those that are gone. Just go. They can't try anymore. They can't push anymore, but I can. And what am I doing? Letting a little fear of failure stop me? Well, come on now. I'm stronger than that. And so
we're way worse than that. Been through a lot more than that.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm still here. Mm-hmm. I've been through some shit and I'm still here. Yeah. And as I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, let's just always remember that I can do really hard things. I've done really hard things. I'll do the next hard thing.
It's part of the lesson to beat fear. There's a cool lesson for that. First off, thanks for sharing the dad thing. Like, that's powerful. And I don't know if people will catch the gravity of how powerful that lesson is for, like, stop wasting minutes. And then whatever you are going to do, like, start doing it. Because if you're waiting for the time to do it, it's right now. Like, start doing it. Like, even a little bit each day, get closer to what it is. So, man, if people don't understand that lesson, that's a powerful one that, and I hate to say it in a morbid way, but the cost to learn that lesson was your dad. And it's like, fuck, that's an expensive lesson. I better fucking pay attention.
And I better not squander it either.
Correct.
That's the way I looked at it. Because I had a choice, what to do with that lesson. And I chose, when you talk about life happening for you, I made the choice a couple of years ago. It was on purpose to start looking at the death of my father as, instead of one of the worst things to have ever happened to me in my life, I decided I'm going to make it one of the best things that has ever happened in my life. I decided that my dad's passing is going to give me the most powerful lessons that I ever needed. And he's going to impart all wisdom in that moment. But it's up to me to decide what happens, I realized. And I could have focused so much on what was gone, on what was lost, all the minutes that were never going to get to be, my unmet expectations of how I thought life might go. And I realized instead, if I just accept that he died, that it never could have been any other way but the way that it was. It's the only way it could have been, because I can't change it. And if it never could have been any other way, if it's the only way it was going to happen, I suppose I get to make it part of the story and make it a good part of the story, make it have meaning. And it's up to me to decide that. And it was incredible how empowering that was to go through that process of I remember the first times I started saying, my dad dying helped me. It felt wrong. It felt like I shouldn't say it. It felt like I was dishonoring him, but I had to start thinking about it. I'm like, no, if I were him, I would want my death to motivate somebody to do something to make their life better. What better way to honor somebody?
Correct.
And so I decided to lean into that. But let me tell you, when you talked about earlier your book with the choice thing, like, this was a choice. Like, I had to choose it, and I had to choose it 1,000 times before it finally became the norm, my default.
Man, well said. Like, it's when I do the race to acceptance and I teach that lesson, that was said very well, exactly what it is. And I hope that if there's anything that people are getting when going through grief, is the way you just explained that is the way that it is done. People try to use denial as acceptance, like, is what it is, can't change it now, and call it the same thing as what you just did to process through every piece to find honor, meaning, and acceptance in what is. And that what you just did was turn it into what it was meant to be, instead of turning it into your identity of loss. And a lot of people will identify themselves as a tragedy because the tragedy defines who they are, instead of saying the thing that happened has taught me to be the man that I needed to be. Like, it's well done.
Yeah.
That is the way that you truly do the correct race to acceptance, is go through each phase, go through all of it, and find true purpose between each fucked up thing we have to go through. Like, honor to you, Chris
Let
Terrell.
it take its time.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Well done. That is the way it is done correctly. And it's cool to see the evolution that you've had to be able to go, like, I found the same lesson as you, Rick. Because that is the explanation I have for my program on how to do this loss. And like you, it's good to see another person who has mastered the same lesson. Well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. Yeah, I like the part too where you talked about, like, I've made it through a lot of things. I'm going to do a quick math session with people. They forget this often when you look at the fortitude that we have as human beings. If I were to say, what's your percentage chance right now of your survival rate after all the stuff you've ever been through? What's your percentage of survival so far?
Mine?
Yeah, what's your percentage rate of survival?
I'm not sure I follow. What do you mean, survival of?
Just life, like everything you've ever been through. How many things have killed you? What's your percentage of, like, I've survived?
my past survival rate. 100%. Yeah. I am so far playing a perfect game.
Yeah, so far you're nailing it. Like, you haven't lost yet. You have a perfect score so far. And anybody listening to this so far also has a perfect score. And yet we don't give ourselves enough credit for having our perfect score. We still look, everything's going to go wrong. Everything's going to go wrong. Everything's going to go wrong. It's like, but you have a perfect score so far. Why would you think everything's going to go wrong? And so, like, when we go through fear and we go through all the things that could go wrong and all the things I'm scared of, there's 7 pieces that I ask people to go through to see, like, I don't know how qualified you are to be able to go through things that could go wrong, which if you ever want to get into anxiety, we should save it for another day, how to beat it. I'll tell you the pieces. But this is just one of the components of let's at least see what your toolkit is. All right, Chris, you ready? I'm going to go through the 7 things. I want to see if you like what your toolkit looks like. You ready?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
First one. Do you have problem solving skills? Like, you've solved problems. Yes. Okay. We got 1. Okay. Next one. Yes. Creativity. I've gotten outside of the box and figured stuff out that wasn't the norm, but I found a way to do it.
Yep.
All right. We got 2 for 2. All right. Third one. Resourcefulness. I don't have it yet, but I can find a way to get it.
Oh yeah. I like, definitely the resourcefulness.
Highly resourceful. So we got that one. All right. Next one. Do you have a support system in any way? I can, like, call and ask for advice, or if I need a backup, someone could help me. Like, I've got any type of support system.
Yes. I call them OSPs. Your only supportive people. Yes.
I like it. You got OSPs. All right. Next one. Do you have positive outlets? Like, whether it be physical, emotional, writing, or meditating, anything. Do you have positive outlets that I can release some steam? Yeah, several. Okay, so we got outlets, so we can take some steam off. What about the next one? Do you have any type of faith or belief that you are not alone? Like, you are not the center of the universe, and there's more to you than just what we are. Do you have a faith in any higher existence? Yes. Okay, good.
Yes, I have. Yes. That's the simple
Call it whatever you want. You can call it God, call it law of attraction. I don't care. Call it whatever you want. Like, there's more to you than just you. So you're not alone. All right. And let's go into, do you have more knowledge and more experience now to handle situations than when you were much younger going through harder things?
Yeah.
So you're far more capable now to handle situations. It looks like you're across the board, every single tool that's really required to be able to do this. It seems like you've got all the tools. Isn't it ironic that we're so worried about stuff that'll happen when you're prepared for just about anything with this system?
Yeah.
Why are we so caught up in what could go wrong when, as soon as you know what it is, I just apply these tools and I can pretty much solve just about anything?
You know, a core tenet to my finding this piece, you know, the anxiety part of working through that, I realized for me, it's recognizing that so far to date, I've handled every challenge that's come my way. The evidence
100%.
shows I'll probably handle what comes next. And if I look at my past, I look at almost all of my problems. I didn't know were coming, and they didn't pan out the way I thought. So it's sort of like,
Correct.
why don't I stop wasting energy planning and take the old adage of, if I have 5 hours to chop down a tree, let's spend 4 sharpening my axe.
Ben Franklin,
so that when it's time to chop down the tree, it's real easy. So
correct.
that's the approach I started taking, which before was trying to anticipate and prevent problems with a high degree of specificity, which is like, that's a waste of energy. I don't know how to tell the future.
Well, you're trying to control everything, and trying to control everything will just reveal how you control nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is peace in the present. But if we get back to the anxiety part, if we get back to what that is, here's a belief system that I challenge people. I've been on a lot of podcasts for this one. When people are diagnosed with some sort of anxiety, or even given one of these like dumb fuck diagnoses that I challenge openly, like anxious attachment disorders or some of this stuff like this stuff is just, these are limiting beliefs that people apply to themselves and act accordingly. When you look at what it is, what somebody is doing is fear comes in through your imagination and creativity system. That's how it comes in. And when you're looking at it coming in, this means you have a very hyperactive creativity and imagination. You're very powerful in this area. Well, people will diagnose this as wrong or bad. There's something wrong with you. Well, no, you can look into the future, and you can create futures, and you can have your emotions attached to these futures, and you can live through them as though they're happening when they're not. This is not a disorder. That's a superpower. That's amazing. You're not broken. You're brilliant. No other animal can do what you're doing. And yet you need medication to stop yourself from your superpower? No, you need training to be able to use your power to your advantage and not let your power use you. When you change your belief system, if you change your belief system that you are not a diagnosis, that you are fucked up or you're broken or you're messed up, to you are ultra powerful and you need to train your ability, because a trained version of anxiety is clairvoyance. I'm looking into the possible futures and finding the things that I can learn from each one of these futures and then deleting what I don't need. You're looking into the future. Now, even more ironic is each future has variables that you can't anticipate. So you have to delete it at some point because there's too many variables and you don't know what you don't know yet. So I have to be open to the curiosity of what is. And the reality is fear hates curiosity, hates courage, hates faith, and hates hope. Hates it because that's how you beat it.
Yeah. The, that mechanism you're talking about, like where we can cast our minds into the future and feel an emotion. I try to always remind people, so this picture behind me is kind of faded, but it's just a black and white thing. But I'm fascinated with the idea of opposition in all things. Everything has its opposite. And if something is used to your detriment, that very same tool of your destruction can be used to save you. And I'm like, if you're plagued by a trauma in your past that you tend to relive all the time as if it's happening now in your mind, you can use that very same mechanism to cast your mind into a better place. You can shift and reshape the memories in your mind because you've already done it, because it's not how you remember it. It never has been and never will be. Because I love the quote from Jim Carrey, what he said, our eyes are projectors playing a story on top of the scene that's playing out in front of our eyes. And so it's like even my own recollection of it is not what happened. It's just how I perceived it and how my fickle memory remembered it. And it's like, once I realized that, I'm like, I can grant myself the permission to recognize my memory is not perfect and it's okay. Never has been, never will be. And also I can remember that if this mind is putting me in turmoil, I'll use the same mind to put me at peace. If I could just but learn how to use it and learn how to focus it and harness it. And no, it won't happen in a month.
You just harness so many powerful pieces. Like first, the neuro-linguistic programming part of it, what you're doing is being able to go back into a memory and create a new one. Like that's how a lot of people take their power back. We do that oftentimes when it gets into rape scenarios and molestation scenarios. When people took power away from somebody, we can go back into that memory and take it back. You know, and also people who are rapey or molesty get a lot less rapey and molesty when I'm there. So if I go in the memory with those person, like, let's go get little you, that person doesn't like when I'm there.
Yeah.
So we create new memories and we rescue little them. You can do that. Also, when it comes to the memories, you're very right. The fickle memory, when they done studies, the highest percentage of accuracy that they found in somebody's memory was 30% correct. That's the highest, by the way, not average. The highest was 70% incorrect. Well, they did the thing where were you on 9/11? Yeah.
Yeah, in a court of law, eyewitness testimony is considered one of the more unreliable forms of evidence.
It's complete nonsense.
We know that our minds are terrible at remembering things, and yet all of us think our own mind is somehow the one exception that remembers it all.
Truth is just our perspective. It's an agreement.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting when you see these pieces put together, because people will argue that they are right. But oftentimes when you ask them to recall what was said, it's changed every time.
Every time.
Yeah. And so somehow we're supposed to say what I said or what I see is 100% accurate. It never is. And that's funny that we'll even argue
telephone in our own mind
all the time. So I like the neuro-linguistic programming part of it. But then also you did the Dr. Dispenza thing. This is something that he said that stuck with me from my own program. If you can think yourself into stress and anxiety and depression, and you can think yourself sick, can't you think yourself well?
Right? Oh, so one of my favorite books out of Psycho-Cybernetics is one I love this book, but one of the chapters in here is it starts off with hold on, let me see. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it basically says is some people get offended when I suggest they use their God-given ability of rationale and reason to solve some of their problems. And it's like, really yeah, funny. You can just take your brain and go, how do I want to use this to help me solve my emotional problems? I'm not saying it's going to work the first time, but it's I'm
offended, Chris. Did you tell me to just think about it? I'm offended.
How dare you?
We just became enemies.
Yeah.
So funny, man. I got a question for you. Here's one that we had a video on it that was funny. My girl asked me, she's like, what offends you? If people get offended so easily, what offends you? What do you got?
What offends me? Like offends me, or I find offensive to watch or be in the presence of?
What offends you? Like, because there are some things like, I don't like watch rape videos and stuff. It's terrible. I don't like it. I'm not offended. It's just I don't like that.
Yeah. One of the things I just don't like to be in the presence of, and in fact, I'll correct it or I'll remove myself from the room, is watching somebody shit talk themselves out loud.
What do you mean?
When someone like makes a mistake and like, oh, I can't do this because I'm an idiot. I'm like, stop that. Because it's like I just watched a person walk up to a person and say, you're a piece of shit. And then I just stood by and watched it. Like, I would never do that. If another person walked up to somebody and emotionally kicked the shit out of them and that person was defenseless, I would step in. Yeah, that's who I am. I'm like, that's not okay. This person, like, they're being bullied. And somehow many people in society have said it's okay if the bully that walked up and kicked the shit out of you is you. In your head, you get a free pass. I basically said, if you're in my presence, everybody knows you don't get a free pass. I will protect you. If you come be a jerk to yourself and I hear you, I'm going to say something. If I don't say it right away, I will say it later.
I want to hear it. So, all right. If someone's going like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm an idiot. I fucking always fuck this up because I'm stupid.
So like, I'll hear somebody say, here, I'll use a good example.
Okay.
My girlfriend's daughter, she did something. She said, I'm just never good at this ever. She was building something with Legos that wasn't working. She's like, I'm just terrible at Legos. I was like, I can't abide that. So I reached over and I'm sitting at her desk. She didn't see me do this. And so I grabbed a Post-it note and I just said, thank you so much for showing your Lego creations. I absolutely love seeing what you create with your mind. I look forward to seeing what you're going to make in the future. And I tucked it away and I hid it in her paper so she'd find it later, not knowing I wrote it. And she came, and that's an example of where I'll say something. It's not that like I have to go be mean and interject. It's just I'm going to counteract what I saw in the way that I think is a helpful thing. Sometimes the answer is I just keep my damn mouth shut and I leave the room. Sometimes that's the right answer. It's not my place. But if it is my place, I got to act. And so I'll do something like that. Sometimes it might be a personal, they'll do something, say, I never get anything right. And I say, is that really true? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you really get nothing right? Nothing. Well, I get some things. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just be honest, right? Don't shortchange yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. So I try to like get in there and do that. That's something I find very offensive. And the I can'ts. When a person's like, I can't.
Fair enough. Those ones I very quickly challenge in a kind way. If someone's like, I'm just never good at this. I'm like, yet. You will be. Yeah. You just got to keep practicing. You're almost there. But we're all bad at stuff at the beginning. Keep going. You're almost there. Or like, what was the other ones you said? Like, when they're picking on us, I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm so stupid at this. I'll be like, hey, quit picking on my friend, man. You'll be like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, you're talking shit about my friend. I like that guy. He's a good dude. Chris, quit talking shit about my buddy. You're like, I don't know. I was talking about me. I was like, yeah, me too. Quit messing with my buddy. I like that guy.
Yeah, you got to call that out when you see it. But that's something that offends me. Otherwise, I try, and offends a strong word. What I really try to do now is look at what's in front of me and just, I don't know what the right word to use is. Because this is something I think about, is what do I do when I'm faced with somebody that is at a different level of awareness on a particular topic? They might exceed my awareness somewhere else, but let's say in this area, like in my case, often weight loss, there's a very big disconnect in awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to, at first it used to frustrate me. I used to get real frustrated with that because I'd be like, all right, I'm explaining this for the 10th time and you're still not getting it. All right, let me try the 11th time, the Edison approach. I'll keep trying. But I started realizing I had to start looking at this person and just going, this is just a consciousness that is where it is. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. Who am I to say it should be somewhere else?
Correct.
And more of just find it and be curious. Why are you this way? Why is it this way? But not from a place of like, oh gosh, how did you end up so terrible? No, nothing like that. It's more of like, I genuinely, truly want to understand you because I didn't live your life. I didn't think your thoughts. I didn't see your sights. I didn't read your words. I don't know your life and your reality. And I'm curious because maybe if I could understand, maybe I could see where I see the world different and I could just put my stuff next to yours and you can look at it and you can just decide what you want to do with it. It's okay. I just want to give you another idea. That's all. But I can't do that until I know what yours are. So
we got to allow people to be where they are.
I try to get now.
Listen, I'm right there with you. A lot of times I'll put people on mission by putting a challenging thing on the table and go, let me know how far you get with it.
Yeah.
Like I just leave, because remember the journey is like the job for us is so hard is that we're trying to get people to discover it, not tell them the answer. And that's the hardest part about the job for all coaches. Anybody's a good coach is like, I'm trying to show you the path, but you got to walk it because people are often going like, Chris, what does the view look like when you're on the top of the mountain? You're like, I can try to explain it to you, man, but we just got to keep going. You're like, no. Is it like the sunset, like really beautiful? Like what are the colors we're going to see? It's like, I can try to explain it, but you got to see, just keep doing the next step, man. Keep doing the next step. Okay. Listen, I've been walking for a while, but what is it like? It's like, dude, just let's keep going. And then they finally get to the top and they can see, and they're like, there's no way you could have explained it. You're like, thank you. You had to experience this, but the only way to experience is all the steps you had to take to get here. I can't tell you. You just have to, you'll feel it when you're there. And it's the hardest part about this job when you're like, they're like, dude, I'm not taking another step until you tell me what it's like. And it's like, all right, well then I guess I'll see you when you start taking steps again.
No, but you're exactly right about that thing. Like you can't just tell someone the answer because of the belief system shift. I realized we're not going to understand it. We're not looking at it the same. And so it's like, I've realized sometimes I have to work with somebody for 6 months just so we can learn how to communicate enough to have one 30-minute conversation.
Denial is the core curse for almost everybody, and to break through the protection system to be able to accept more than the reality that they're at war with it takes so long sometimes.
It does. It does.
It's one of the hardest ones. Even with like my women's groups have been really difficult because like even when they know the answer, to break the protection system they've used, through like their persona or who they believe that they've had to become in order to make it in this world, it's taken like 10 weeks sometimes just for them to go, oh, that's what you're talking about. And I'm like, you see the mask, you see the persona. Can we get to your authenticity without you trying to convince me that the mask is you for real? I just need you to quit doing that, please. And then when they finally get it, we make a lot more progress in a couple weeks than we did in a couple months.
Well, and it's, a lot of people they get so worried about the unknown. And when I think sometimes people can sense that I have an idea of what I'd like them to know, but I won't tell them. And it's sort of like, they're like, just tell me. I'm like, I can't, because honestly, I'll ruin it. Like, just trust me. Just go on this little journey with me. Just trust me. It's going to take 5 minutes. Like, just go on it. And, but I have to look at people like that and recognize that is the belief fighting back. I realize in my own coach, my best coaches, I say, look, you're not doing your job if at least twice a month I don't be like in my head, fuck you. If I don't get that one, you ain't challenging me. And if I don't get off one coaching call going, I think I'm going to cancel. I don't want to see that guy anymore. Like if I don't think that both of those at least once a month ain't working. Because it's like, we do resist the shifting in our beliefs. Even when I'm like at a place where I think of beliefs like t-shirts. You can just take them off, put another one on. But sometimes, damn it, that t-shirt don't want to come off. It's like I'm all sweaty and it's stuck to me and it just won't get off. But yeah, it's fun to be on this end of it though and watch it. It's a part of life I never knew it was going to be in the cards because I had a very different professional life before I got into this. And it's been a very interesting thing to learn a whole lot about default standard human. And realize that average human is pretty fucking amazing. And I don't know why I was so disappointed with being just like everybody else, like for so long. Because even being authentic. Well, even being authentic in what you are, not being like everybody else, is pretty damn wonderful. Yeah, you just be the first yourself. There's nobody like you. If you be like anybody else, you're just a poser. Well, if you keep trying to be like everybody else, I know whenever I tried to be like everyone else, it turns out everyone else was already taken. And so I had to just be myself. And come to find out, no one's better at being me but me. You're the best. You're the best you that's ever, the best you that ever existed. No matter how good or bad that is, it's still the best one of you that's ever been. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to start shifting and thinking life in these terms versus how I used to. A lot more freeing. Yeah. Hey, man, I'm not trying to push on you. We got 2.5 hours. How you feeling, man? You want to keep going or are you good? I'm good. I mean, I think I got a girlfriend I got to take to sushi for dinner, so I'll probably have to wrap up here soon, but I'm doing good. I'm like you. I talk for a living, so it takes me an hour to clear my throat. I'm good. I can keep going. Listen, you're my last call of the day, so I'm good. So if we want to keep going, let's keep rocking. I always love the offended stuff. No, I got to run and get to my. I got to take. Oh, you're doing it now. Let's Well, we're gonna have to go here soon. So if we want to kind of find the thread, if you want, I'll find it. Let's wrap it up. Yeah, let's wrap it up. No problem. All right. So we'll have to do another one though because I've enjoyed this. Oh no. We've got plenty more of these to do. So in any case, if people have listened to this conversation, this is two people who are at a very high level who recognize that we still have a lot more journey to go, but we've gone pretty damn far. And you're like, I want to get at least as far as you two have gone. How do they get in touch with Chris? What do they have to do? If they're like, I want to work with you, how do I become Chris's client? What do I do? So first thing I tell everybody, if you're wanting to learn about the way I do things, you can just come right to the front door if you'd like. It's christerrellcoaching.com, sign up and go. But honestly, the way I tell it, I want people to do is go to my podcast and just start listening. Start with episode 100. It's my story. It's my background. I made it a pretty big one. And I want you to listen to several episodes of my podcast, like a bunch, and just try the things I talk about. if you're getting results and you're finding you're liking it, then I'd like to, if somebody wants to work with me, that's where I say, come to my community. But I want to give the value first. Like, just go try it. I don't hold back. I want everybody to be successful. And so just go there, because the community side, it's just, there's so much there. So you can go to theguildofchampions.com. And that's if somebody wants to work with me, they can go there. So if somebody's already familiar with me and they're like, hey, I'd love to work with Chris, like, go to theguildofchampions.com. That's my membership. It's all about helping people lose weight, people that have struggled with that chronic yo-yo dieting, up, down again, and trying to make it stick, make it permanent. A lot of the stuff we talk about today, a lot of these journeys began in that process, because I got to the core of what created the weight gain, not trying to get good at losing weight. I wanted to get really good at not gaining weight and get really good at taking care of my body, so I never needed to lose weight again. That was always the objective. So that'd be the place to go. And you can find me on TikTok at OG_Chris_Terrell.
Awesome, dude. This was a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate hanging out with you. I think it was a good time, man.
Me too. I have not had a conversation like this in a little while. This was very refreshing to have, to kind of, because some of these concepts I only can talk to little bits of it with pieces or with people, but to get to kind of flesh some of them out. For some of this was the first time I've had to articulate it to another human. So it was very enjoyable to do that.
It's a good time. It's fun to be able to have the people that we can run with. It's good that we can challenge each other to push an idea that other people will be like, you're a little esoteric at the moment, I can't catch it. And you're like, no, I'm going to bounce it off of my network of other people who are doing that too. And it's a lot of fun. And so I'm glad that we got to meet today, and we're going to have a lot more fun conversations.
Definitely. For sure.
Awesome. Chris Terrell, I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you so much. And we'll do more in the future. Go crush it today, brother.
Thanks. You too, man. Look forward to seeing it again. And have a great weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
Click on the button and you can become the hero in your own story. It's time to start making the choices to change. And the evolution that you're going to do begins with choosing the next step. This is the way. And together, we're always stronger.